Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon from Pakistan. My name is Hassan Saeed and I will be your host for today. I welcome you all to this webinar to mark the launch of Karandaaz's report on climate smart, low cost housing in Pakistan. Today's webinar has been organized by Karandaaz Pakistan. Karandaaz is a non-for-profit company funded by UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We encourage everyone to share their thoughts on social media using the following hashtags: climate action, KRN webinar, climate finance. And now we would like to welcome, we'll be beginning with welcome remarks by Mr. Waqasul Hassan, CEO Karandaaz, and opening remarks by Dr. Shamshad Akhtar, Chairperson Karandaaz, followed by a keynote address by Mr. Arif Hassan Saab. Following these remarks, we'll have two panel discussions, and we'll be inviting climate smart, low cost housing solution providers to present their interventions in Pakistan and other countries. And we'll have closing remarks by Ms. Sobia Becker, who is the Senior Climate Change Advisor for the FCDO office in Pakistan. To begin today's proceedings, I would like to invite Mr. Waqasul Hassan, CEO Karandaaz, for the welcoming remarks. Mr. Hassan has rich experience in designing and implementing a wide range of development finance programs on infrastructure finance, public-private partnerships, climate finance, MSME finance, credit guarantees, and digital finance. He has also served as an advisor on financial sector projects in Afghanistan, Ukraine, Bangladesh, Jordan, and the UK. He has a special interest in climate-related investment and regulatory reforms, seeding innovations, entrepreneurship, and establishing key institutions that impact the financial landscape in the country. I would like to invite Mr. Waqasul Hassan to join us and to give his opening remarks.
Me.
I think Mr. Waqasul Hassan is just joining us. He is having a few internet issues, I believe. He'll be joining us in just a brief moment. I'm really sorry for the delay. We have been facing some internet issues. I believe he is just joining us online. Mr. Waqas has joined us. I would like to welcome him to give his opening remarks.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम हसन आपने मुझे इनवाइट कर लिया था डिजिटल डोर बंद रखा था
I'm really sorry for that, sir. I'm really sorry for that. My apologies. Please.
It happens. Very sorry and apologies for this. Dr. Shamshad Akhtar, Chairperson Karandaaz, our special guest and keynote speaker, Mr. Arif Hassan Saab, panelists, moderators, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I am pleased to welcome you to this webinar through which Karandaaz is launching a study in climate smart low income housing in Pakistan. As many of you know, Karandaaz was set up in 2014. We focus on improving access to finance for unbanked and underbanked individuals and micro, small and medium enterprises, with the ultimate aim of creating jobs and improving livelihoods. We are really a very wholesale mixed bag in terms of instruments, but knowledge creation enjoys essential place in what we do and how we do things. So creating knowledge as an instrument to push frontiers of innovation and to crowd in investment to enable informed policy decision making is something that we do on a very, very routine basis on a wide range of themes. Karandaaz's mandate is to promote financial inclusion in the country. We believe in the problem of low access to finance for SMEs requires a multi-pronged approach to finding solutions to neglected issues like climate change. Climate change is a major risk to our development outcomes and the progress that has been achieved over the years. The recent flood disaster in Pakistan caused one of the worst humanitarian crises. Over 33 million people were displaced. 1/7 have lost their homes, and there are over 1,300 mortalities. Moreover, recent World Bank data estimates that Pakistan is facing a total of $30 billion worth of economic losses in terms of damages and reconstruction costs. The Global Climate Risk Index 2021 ranks Pakistan as the 8th most vulnerable country to climate change. Now, this is despite its meager contribution of 0.6 to global greenhouse gas emissions. It's quite unfortunate that we did not cause this nor deserved it, but the reality is that we have to save ourselves from this. I was hesitant to quote primarily because it sounds quite dramatic, but I could not resist because it's true. PM told United Nations General Assembly recently that for 40 days and 40 nights, a biblical flood poured down on us, smashing centuries of weather records, challenging everything that we knew about disaster and how to manage it. This is the reality of Pakistan today. We are exposed to it on year-on-year basis. This high vulnerability is due to its geographic location, high dependence on land and water resources, low adaptive capacity, and weak systems of emergency preparedness. The frequency and intensity of adverse climate change events are expected to exacerbate people's socioeconomic conditions by triggering wide-ranging and strong negative feedback loops between climate vulnerability and multidimensional poverty. Therefore, it is imperative for us to develop resilient and adaptable systems and invest in buildings in a low carbon sustainable future. Globally, buildings and construction contribute an estimated 39% of total greenhouse gas emissions produced. The systemic failure to address this will undermine long-term household and community resilience to climate risks. However, a transformational opportunity exists, as approximately 70% of the buildings that will exist in Africa and Asia by 2050 are yet to be built. It's key to ensure that solutions to the housing crisis support and are in line with the Paris Agreement and global sustainability goals. There are challenges both on the demand and supply side of climate smart housing. I will not go into detail as the two panels discussions would be discussing them. Pakistan's mortgage finance to GDP ratio is around 0.25%, which is extremely low compared to South Asia average of 3.4%. Private sector credit availability for low-income housing is further constrained as most formal banks remain highly conservative in their creditworthiness assessments of potential borrowers, leaving the undocumented unable to access financing for affordable housing, let alone housing that is also climate smart. Building a climate smart housing value chain will bring additional financing and operational challenges, especially when it comes down to lowering embodied carbon emissions through adopting climate smart construction techniques. There are several ways we can approach this issue. One is arranging and mobilizing financing. There are several global vehicles which exist. For example, there is this Green Climate Fund, which is quite an important global player and an opportunity for Pakistani financial intermediaries. I'm glad to report Karandaaz is also taking steps for its accreditation. The process, however, is quite slow and requires a great deal of patience. We are trying to go through it. Another way is collaboration, and it's key for making the much needed disruptive impact in the market and transition towards climate smartness. The level of collaboration will require proactive engagement of the development agencies, private sectors, state government agencies, municipalities, and academia with each other. There are examples we can look around on how and what collaboration can deliver. India provides a similar context, so I'll quote the example from India. A global building performance network was GBPN was formed in India in 2019. This network established a local expert partnership with the Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy and the CEPT University Ahmedabad. This supported policy adoption involving an energy conservation building code for residential buildings, locally known as Econivas Sameta for ENS. The pilot was part of affordable housing projects under the National Affordable Housing Program of the Indian government. The network supported the project through a partnership grant and technical capacity building support. Through taking a bottom-up approach, the network is enabling local expert partners to demonstrate the benefits of adopting the residential energy conservation building code. Now, this is something that we can look at in Pakistan too. Nothing of the sorts or even pilots exist here. Karandaaz is contributing to the climate effort in many ways. We have a two-tiered approach, mobilizing climate finance in SME space and supporting innovation. We have live deals in the space of renewable energy, energy efficiency, and we are very proud that we are funding a green building in Karachi as well. That investment can potentially be converted into Pakistan's first green REIT. We also are now annually holding a Green Challenge Fund in which we are inviting proposals across a range of themes, water conservation, hospital waste management, plastic waste management, etc. So we have got our skin in the game. I would like to use this opportunity to invite others to join hands for a collaborative effort towards achieving climate resilience and sustainability. Before I end, I would like to extend my gratitude to Mr. Arif Hassan for taking out the time to be with us today and delivering the keynote address. I would also like to thank Dr. Shamshad Akhtar, Chairperson of Karandaaz, for her participation and constant guidance. I know green is very close to her heart. FCDO is Karandaaz's anchor sponsor and has supported all its green initiatives. I would like to thank in advance Ms. Sobia Becker, Senior Climate Change Advisor, who will be delivering closing remarks, and last but not least, Emptis Advisory and Real Limited for their excellent work in collaboration with Karandaaz on the research study that will be launched today. My own team, I'm very grateful to Meher and Ali Akbar, who passionately worked on Report with Real and keep introducing us exciting themes. Many thanks to Meher Nisa and Ramsha for calm support in putting together this webinar. Over to you, Hassan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vikas, for your valuable insights. And now I would like to welcome Dr. Shamshad Akhtar, Chairperson Karandaaz. Dr. Akhtar is an economist and has broad-based development experience, having held a range of senior positions at national and multilateral organizations. Dr. Akhtar has formerly served as the finance minister in the caretaker government and as well as government of State Bank of Pakistan. At the international level, she has served as the Secretary General of UN ESCAP and the UN Secretary General's Special Senior Advisor on Economics and Finance. Dr. Akhtar has a PhD in economics and a postdoctorate degree from the University of Harvard. Presently, Dr. Akhtar chairs the boards of Pakistan Stock Exchange, Pakistan Institute of Corporate Governance, the Swiss Southern Gas Company Limited, and Engro Pakistan, amongst other important portfolios. Dr. Akhtar, I would now ask you to give your remarks.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay. So first of all, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and thanks to everybody that has that has played a fundamental role in organizing this very timely event, as I see, in the backdrop of what we have seen, the worst devastation as a result of the floods. People are still standing on the sidelines in tents, trying to wait for their turn to get a low income and low carbon and climate resilient housing. So a warm welcome to Mr. Arif Hassan, in whose presence talking about housing is a difficult task. He and I have had the occasion to meet when I was at the State Bank and subsequently heard him. With his knowledge, I'm sure we will benefit a lot in taking this initiative of knowledge management forward. I'd like to thank the panelists, presenters, moderators, and everyone else who's there. Karandaaz, as your knowledge partner, is launching this study on climate smart, low income housing in Pakistan. Credit goes to Meher and her team to structure the report, at least in the present form, and take it forward. Provision of proper low-income housing ensures a minimum standard for welfare for a family unit. And as we know, that the floods in Sindh and Balochistan have reversed the progress on SDG goals, and in particular, demolished houses. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights and its reaffirmation at the 1996 UN Habitat Conference underscores the adequate shelter for all commitment. To meet ambitions of these conventions, the Pakistan's housing indicators paint a dire picture. There is a yawning demand and supply gap of over 12 million houses that has been growing at the rate of 400,000 annually, which is only partly covered by the activities of whoever is involved in the housing business, but more so of the commercial developers. Market failure and government's lack of effective policy framework for new, resilient, and cost-effective investment and burden on existing housing stock that has been victim of the lack of spatial planning, ineffective land acquisition framework, haphazard expansion, growth and perpetuation of slums, and quality deterioration surrounding it, as well as the weaknesses of housing finance and policy, are some of the critical factors impeding an effective development. And I would like to cover some of these elements, if not all. First, I would be amiss if I did not recognize that Pakistan is a signatory of various treaties and international frameworks relating to climate change, such as the Conference of Parties, which has been being held in Sharm el-Sheikh, under the umbrella of the United Nations Climate Change Conference, UNFCCC, and of course, the 2015 UN SDG agenda, along with Addis Ababa financing framework. SDG architecture integrates housing in various goals. It was a very difficult process, I must tell you, having been involved in the negotiations of the 17 SDG goals, and ultimately SDG goal, with the efforts of UN Habitat in particular, did end up focusing on sustainable cities and communities and climate action, with the UNFCCC championing it. And it all appears in the context of SDG 7 goal, which has focus on good health, well-being, gender equality, reduction, eradication of poverty, clean water and sanitation, and all the related critical elements. And then SDG 6 focused on decent work and economic growth, justice and strong institutions and partnership, along with all other elements that are pertinent for the housing sector to design as I see. Analysis of the 17 SDGs with their 169 targets and corresponding indicators, which run in around 200, includes, among others, emphasis on household resilience and sustainability, including durable, healthy construction. Furthermore, housing, it is recognized, can create a sense of place, security, and dignity with potential to build community cohesion, as well as one's social and financial network, and empower you with an asset. Economic activity generated from housing construction has a multiplier effect as it generates community jobs, income, and boost construction material industry, and providing opportunities for home-based industry. So aside from the shortage of affordable and livable housing stock in Pakistan, the inhabitants are experiencing heightened vulnerability to climate change, be it rising global temperatures or heavy monsoons, as we have witnessed. Under climate stress, even durable homes get impacted by intense heat, seismic activity, air pollution, or flooding, which in turn aggravates health with negative safety outcomes. In urban areas where 40% of population resides in informal settlements, rising temperatures are compounded by urban heat island, UHI effect, which absorbs and remits the sun's rays and increases heat levels. Management of housing is further complicated by growing frequency of severe climate-related events, as demonstrated by 2022 flooding, changing crop patterns, as well as energy resources and growing population stress. So with this backdrop, we look forward to expert advice on one, how can housing be resilient and promote more climate resilience for lower income communities that are unfortunately hit more adversely by events like the one that we are still suffering from, and safeguarding our population from long-term, both the short-term and long-term impacts. Second, how can the nationwide housing crisis be solved? And third, what interventions are needed to spur housing sector activity, deploying commercial and innovative financial modalities, given that we have had problems with the delivery of finance for the housing sector. And I'll touch on some of these elements. So although the government has formulated a national policy, not once, but several times, and in several iterations, cohesive policy to address the myriad challenges through the National Housing Policy 2001, which was later revised in 2013 to encourage provisions through the free market and empowerment of sector stakeholders. The 3 years when I was at the central bank level, we had the privilege of really learning from a lot of capable people on how to go about the safeguarding the housing. And you will probably hear from some of them the storyline. So this policy was then revised in 2013 to encourage provision basically through free market and empowerment of the sector stakeholders. Let me turn to 2007, when I was in the central bank. Central bank tried to supervise the report authored by Housing Advisory Group that articulated a set of 10 challenges and proposed action plan with recommendations to address them. To this date, pervasive policy impediments stand in the way of progress, in particular weak enforcement because of absence of foreclosure laws, lack of standardization in land tilting, onerous stamp duties, availability of low-cost housing, and access to finance. And all this is, I'm sure, very familiar to our experts. In 2022, a lot of activity took place because of the mission of then government to provide housing to all. So there was this famous Naya Pakistan Housing Development Authority that was incorporated and established with the goal of planning, development, construction, and management of real estate and housing development schemes. This particular body's implementation, like few other activities, have fallen short of plugging the current housing shortfall of 12 million homes. Of the 5 million housing units promised by the government, less than 1% has been delivered and none executed through this particular body, NEFTA, which came with a lot of big bang, with a lot of people behind it. But NEFTA does not incorporate. Unfortunately, not only has it not delivered, but it did not incorporate climate smart approaches and innovations, nor was it aware of the climate mitigation potential of housing. This is despite the introduction of green building codes and an autonomous body called Green Building Council in Pakistan that advocates for green buildings and is the auditor of local green certification backed by the promotion of SEEDS, the Sustainability in Energy and Environmental Development. There is hence work to be done in the green housing space, is the first order of priority, I would say. Let me state few fundamental elements that we need to really go over. First, the 2008 Pakistan building codes apply only to the design of multi-story buildings. And until recently, no such code existed specifically for residential housing units. In fact, I was trying to get solar on my rooftop very recently, and I was told that I will confront a lot of problems with the Defense Housing Authority. And lo and behold, I did. And the policy framework of the CASC leaves a lot to be desired. So while protection against seismic events has been incorporated into the assessment criteria for new buildings by city planning and development authorities like Lahore Development Authority, progress on energy efficiency and conservation is held back due to a lack of technical capacity and clarity between government units. A second point I'd like to highlight is that there is a lot of space of action in housing finance, particularly the green housing finance. In Pakistan, commercial banks, DFIs, and 3 non-bank financial institutions are extending mortgages, which Vikas also mentioned, at the customer level, but primary mortgage lenders' portfolio remains small to date. Smaller ticket size loans are provided by microfinance institutions, but the age-old state-owned housing building finance company has big portfolio suffers from a high infection rate. my recommendation several times has been to reform this particular company. Pakistan Mortgage Refinance Company, established in 2016 as a secondary mortgage facility with joint ownership of private sector banks and the Ministry of Finance, has mandate to extend long-term loans to financial institutions at a fixed rate so that banks do not have to face asset liability mismatches. Pakistan Mortgage Refinance Company was perhaps the Housing Advisory Group's only tangible achievement in the region. India, Egypt, Malaysia, Jordan have well-established secondary mortgage markets and have a thriving mortgage industry. So PMRC has certainly provided an uplift to the financial landscape of housing industry. PMRC has advanced rupees 24 billion in 2021, which is a growth of 59% from the previous year. And indeed, it can play an instrumental role in offering liquidity to the housing market. Let me turn to another point, which is related to the fact that DFIs and banks are providing loans to home loans to less than 60,000 customers. It is evident that banks are reluctant to offer loans to low-income market spectrum, as they traditionally lend to upper-income brackets. Banks shy away from the customer segment of the real sector and SME segment of the builders. One of the major reasons is weak land titling and foreclosure, which I touched upon, that induce a huge amount of risk aversion for enhancing the housing portfolio for the right reasons, frankly. Hence, it is to be recognized that financing and regulations in the housing market are intertwined. So it is important to unlock and attract investment upfront by addressing housing policy and regulatory gaps and issues and distortions. In addition, we need to think through clearly and move forward with the rule of law and enforceability of contracts. We need to also encourage government, a big ask, to move towards macroeconomic stability, which is critical for the stability of the real interest rates. This one is a really tough agenda. Few developments, of course, are noteworthy. For example, Trellis, a new and non-bank financial company, has tapped into low-income home loan segment by forming a tripartite arrangement with a builder and borrower and entering into a co-lending arrangement with a commercial bank, and Trellis conducts the appraisal of the borrower to fast-track disbursements. The point I made earlier about greening housing sector, Pakistan can encourage green bond issuance to finance climate resilient housing and related infrastructure where trillions have been invested. Green bonds have to be asset-backed. Example, residential or commercial buildings are the assets and have to be rated by a third party. This is a huge development priority for Pakistan, which Karandaaz is not shying away from. Of significance to a green investor would be lower construction cost of a net zero home, which cost almost more than half compared to the traditional constructed concrete homes. The differential is substantial, and it could avoid almost 200 million tons of carbon dioxide, CO2 emissions, which has its own cost. And by developing it, we can also take forward the advantage of retailing in carbon markets, as I see. Market size for affordable houses is reported to be 165 million in 2020 to cater to housing deficit of 12 million homes. This is expected to grow to 537 billion by 2050. There is ample opportunity for green builders and government to intervene to develop the climate smart housing value chain and encourage further sector activity as it has important ramifications. The economy benefits from reduced carbon emissions. The units are cheaper to build and buy, and the recurring and maintenance costs are lower than that of traditional homes. To this end, it is very encouraging to see the presence of builders that have come up with creative solutions for green housing units. Let me conclude by profusely thanking the Karandaaz knowledge management team for steering this initiative and for Meher's leadership on the knowledge management, as well as Waqas, who has been really paying due attention to knowledge management, along with the intermediation, and of course, launching climate resilient and green initiatives. And of course, I'd like to thank all the industry leaders from the builder community, experts in finance, and other fields to contribute to reflect on low income, climate resilient, and green initiatives. I thank you all, and I look forward to benefiting and learning from all of you for the rest of the event. Most of all, I'd like to once again reiterate my special thanks to Arif Saab, who has been a source of inspiration because he goes beyond the talk to actually walk the path. Thank you, Arif Hassan Saab, for being here. All the best to everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Shamshad, for your valuable insights on this. And now I would like to welcome Dr. Arif Hassan Saab for the keynote address. Mr. Arif Hassan, one of Pakistan's most renowned architects, he wears numerous hats, including those of an urban planner, activist, teacher, social researcher, and writer. Mr. Hassan studied architecture at the Oxford Polytechnic, UK. On his return to Karachi in 1968, he established an independent practice which slowly evolved into dealing with national and international urban planning and development issues. Mr. Hassan has had a long association with the Urangi Pilot Project, one of the earliest community financed and built infrastructure, sanitation and housing programs undertaken in Pakistan. He has published widely on urban issues. Books authored by him include Working with Government, the story of the Urangi Pilot Project's collaboration with state agencies for replicating its low-cost sanitation program, as well as Understanding Karachi, Planning and Reform for the Future, Working with Communities and the Unplanned Revolution, Observations on the Process of Socio-Economic Change in Pakistan. Mr. Hassan has taught at Pakistani and European universities and lectured widely both in the global north and the global south. He is also the founding chairperson of the Urban Resource Center and has been a member of the External Review Committee for the Aga Khan Program for Islamic Architecture at MIT and Harvard. He's a senior fellow of the Pakistan Institute of Development Economics and chairperson of the federal government's task force on urbanization. Mr. Hassan is the recipient of numerous illustrious awards, including the Lifetime Achievement Award of the Institute of Architects, Pakistan. He also received the Halali Imtiaz for public service of the government of Pakistan and the Prince Claus Award for contribution to architecture and development. And now I would like to welcome Arif Hassan Saab to give his keynote address.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, fine. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for having invited me to deliver this talk. You know, I'm no expert on climate change or pandemics, although I'm sharing some attempts at addressing them. And all that I know of the floods and their problems are from other people, because I have not really worked on the 2022 floods. But I did work on the 2010 floods. And I would like to add a few things that I have learned during the 2010 floods and in monitoring the situation in a number of settlements after the 2010 floods. So let me say a few things that I have learned. First of all reconstruction, rebuilding was not done by the state or formal sector builders. It was done by the people themselves. Before also, they constructed their own homes, and after their homes had been destroyed, they again constructed their own homes without any help at all from the state sector or any private entrepreneurs, except for a very small percentage that were built through charity organizations and NGOs, and also by international agencies. But it was such a small amount that it didn't really change very much in the overall situation. So that is one thing I would like to share with you. The other thing that I have learned through my many years of working on housing and community infrastructure is that if the community can afford to pay for it, or even partially pay for it, you have a national program. If it is heavily dependent on external funds, you at best have a few projects that die after the funds cease to be. Now, this is what I have learned. And so I will not talk about individual solutions and percentages, because in my experience, individual experiences do not really constitute or give us the whole picture. And statistics usually lie. It depends on who makes the statistics. Much of what has been said by the two speakers before me, whom I respect enormously, is an attempt, and that attempt is extremely important, to create the necessary legal framework and financial framework for housing. Creating it is extremely important, but its delivery is extremely difficult. Why is it difficult? I don't have to explain that to you. I'm sure you already know why it is difficult. So can we go beyond that? And that is what I would try to deal with in the few points that I will now raise. One point is that the most obvious climate change event in Pakistan has been flooding. According to some statistics, this has brought 1/3 of our country underwater. The main cause of this flooding is consistent rain, but in 2010 it was not consistent rain. It was water that had come mainly from the other provinces into Sindh. So there are these two aspects: rain somewhere else, flooding in the lower regions of Pakistan, and consistent rain, which is a different phenomenon because the monsoon changed its course in 2022. We cannot do anything about its changing course. We are the victims of that. But there are lessons to be learned and understood by what followed that changing of course. So the main climate change has been flooding. And in addition to flooding, the other aspect of the floods has been that you cannot drain out the water. So for me, these are two very important aspects which are related to human settlements and their future planning. I think a lot of importance should be given to these two aspects, because without these two aspects, you cannot possibly have safe human settlements. So this is one thing that I wanted to put across. Now, reasons for not being able to drain out water has been an irrationally constructed embankments, roads without culverts in them to drain out water, canals, headworks, and barrages that have not been desilted, and the drainage system, same nalis, which are full of vegetation and have not been cleaned. There are a lot of other aspects too, which I will not go into. Another important issue in reconstruction is the high cost of building in conventional materials, such as cement and steel. Burnt brick is also expensive and involves the burning of fossil fuels, as do cement and steel. So alternatives become necessary, and alternatives that are affordable to the people. Subsidies cannot be individually provided, but they can be provided to the supply of these materials for reconstruction in areas that have been flooded or affected by earthquake even. Now, when we look at it, entire areas have been wiped out due to the absence of drainage, as I have said. So a very important aspect in rural areas is the choice of a location for reconstruction. It has to be in a location where there is a disposable point available for water. And any hindrance to reach the disposal point will need to be removed. Over here, the irrigation department and the PWD need to understand this and need to work on this. But first, a policy for this has to be developed. And this is something that can be easily done. I mean, I can speak for Sindh. It can be done very easily for the entire province without any difficulty. And that will help in the construction of safe human settlements. The individual unit can follow. These houses, apart from being safe from inundation, would also need a plinth, a construction up to the plinth that can take flooding, that can take the flow of waters through them. So the plinth becomes a very important aspect. The development is the plinth of any housing unit, because that is the only safety it can have where flooding cannot be controlled. Also, it is my belief, which I have articulated many times, both in writing and in the construction of so-called prototypes, that housing can be of stabilized earth. This material is available to the people, and it can be cast in steel shuttering, which can be provided to them by an organization that circulates that steel shuttering. The construction is very quick and quick. You can construct a two-room house with a latrine and a kitchen in 5 to 6 days in compacted earth. I believe that compacted earth is the solution, and for walls and for the plinth. And where the right sort of earth is not available, it can be stabilized through the use of lime or through the use of cement. Lime is better in environmental terms. This type of construction has been developed by Indus Earth, whose work I have seen, and I have been very impressed by it because it is truly climate smart. Although I don't like the word smart, but it is climate smart. And it is strong enough to withstand the flow of water. But the major issue in housing is the roof. The only chief roof that you can have is of local materials. But there you will need to break the span of the rooms so that local materials, who do not have a very big span, need to be used. That can be broken by a timber member, or it can be broken by a plywood beam, which is extremely cheap to make, but the plywood used for the beam will have to be imported from the cities. It will be the only element that will be used for the construction. So these are some of the aspects that I have learned by the 2010 flood. And I will come to the urban areas. But before I come to the urban areas, I would like to point out what the Urban Resource Center, whose chairperson I was at that time, when the housing crisis of the 2010 floods emerged. What we decided was that we would tell the people, the villagers who were affected by the floods, that you build the walls. If you can build the walls, we'll provide the roof elements. And like this, we were able to build very fast over 35,000 houses. It was my view that if this was adopted for the whole province, we would have gone well over 200,000 houses, because it didn't cost anything. Cost is a very major aspect. Individual housing, you can never sort of give all the affected persons the necessary funds for building their homes or building their homes for them. But this was done very fast and at comparative, very cheap costs. It was just the roof, and that also a few elements that were supplied. Let me now come to the urban areas. Here the situation is different. In Karachi, if I take Karachi, the obvious reason for the flooding of Karachi is that the roofs and compounds of all the buildings in the city drain out onto the road as a matter of policy. They drain out and they find their way into the sewage system, and when the sewage system can't take them, they overflow. And when it rains consistently, they become raging torrents through which no one can pass. Now, there are two ways to deal with this. One is that you have a proper drainage system, surface drainage system for the city. I don't think we can afford it. We neither have the funds for it, nor do we have the capability and capacity to build it. So for the time being, we will have to live these torrents, I'm afraid. But there are other ways of dealing with it. And one is making bores that go down to the water level and disposing of the water in this. This is effective. Many engineers have written on social media about it. And I, as an architect, have done this to amphitheaters that are well below the water level. I think this experiment in a big way needs to be carried out. And of course, the hydrologists will determine where these bores have to be. So that disposal of this water becomes a very important aspect. These possibilities need to be considered seriously. But meanwhile, what do we do for low-cost housing, low-income housing? I won't say low-cost, but low-income housing. There are two aspects to this. One, that 62% of Karachi's population lives in Kachi abadis, which have unpaved roads and often are below the level of the main city roads, main city arteries. Because of this, they not only flood, but remain flooded for long periods of time well after the rains have ceased. Here, an upgrading program becomes necessary. In addition to dealing with the flooding aspect, this program needs to promote light and ventilation and make places of water usage in the house non-porous. Simply by these three attempts, which we have made in a big way in many lanes of Rangi, health improves considerably, saving people a lot of money that they can invest in the education of their children. Not only that, health improves, but also physical health improves, but also mental health improves. Surveys made on this work show remarkable change that takes place even in human relations within the house. So that is a comparatively easier thing to do than improving homes otherwise. And this is a very cheap thing to do. It doesn't cost very much. Now, the other aspect is difficult to do because the state agencies would not like it. That is to build culverts through roads that can get this water out and remove the roads that are barriers to the flow of water. But these roads have been built, it is unlikely that this will ever take place. So we will have to live for the time being with this flooding and learn how best we can deal with it, how best communities can deal with it. But what I have suggested would also be very important and useful during periods of pandemics. I nowadays chair a Union of International Architects forum on health and architecture. And this is what we have suggested. But there is another aspect, which is the building of new homes which are environmentally friendly, limiting the heat island effect. For this, the external walls and roof of the homes need to be effectively insulated, and all the rooms need to have cross ventilation. Research on cheap materials which house builders can afford through the informal system, which they deal with, needs to be done and marketed to local contractors who build low-income housing in the informal settlements. Now, here we need research. What can the cheap materials which have which can keep heat out, how can we develop those materials? There has been no research on it, and the materials that have been developed are extremely expensive. The insulation for the roof is even more expensive. And I have spoken to a lot of manufacturers of paints that, all right, can we have cheap paints that we can paint the roof with so that the temperature levels can be lower? All they have offered are very expensive paints. Nobody in the Kachi Abadi except the very well off could ever afford those paints. So this is a very important point of research. Paints on the roof and materials for walls, for the external walls of a house, and the marketing of these to low-income groups. I think this would change your houses completely. And it would overcome with cross ventilation, it would overcome to a great deal heat island effect, of which Dr. Saiba had spoken. So this research, unfortunately, has not been undertaken except for the formal sector housing and for private sector development. So this, we need to come down to this level, I'm afraid. Also, we have not developed materials of construction that are not dependent on the use of fossil fuels. In their absence, cement and steel will continue to be used for the time being. The plastic option which is being developed is also not much better, and it is more expensive than steel. And if it is insulator, it is more expensive than steel or cement. The option of using timber as a building material is also a possibility. But then you have to ensure that you don't denude the country of trees. And if you do use trees, then you plant far more trees than you did. The other aspect that is important is densities. We have to see that we do not increase densities more than 450 persons per acre anywhere, which is about 1,000 persons, 1,100 persons per hectare. Right now, we have densities in Karachi that are more than 3,000 persons per hectare, and densities as low as 80 persons per hectare in elite settlements. So the use of land needs to be rationalized. I personally feel that we need a major land reform which limits the use of land for housing. Maybe a land law that prohibits the ownership of more than 500 square yards per person for housing would be a solution, or a heavy non-utilization of heavy non-utilization fee on land and property. All these things have been suggested on various panels on which I have had the privilege to sit, but these have never been implemented. All that I have suggested requires a process of research and demonstration. But unfortunately, we do not have the time. But following the principles I have outlined, we can easily begin reconstruction work. There are other problems as well, not only in Karachi, but also in the irrigated parts of our country. Let us take Karachi. Certain outlets to the sea in Karachi at high tide are lower than the sea level, and as such, water cannot be drained out. This is not dissimilar with canals who require a higher level than the water that comes into them from the barrages, weirs, and weirs. The other aspect, which is very serious, is the constant reclamation of land from the sea for both elite and low-income housing. This reclamation has to be put a stop to, because apart from destroying the fauna and flora of the coastal areas of the city, it is creating settlements that will be subject to constant flooding in the future. And most of these settlements on reclaimed land are low-income settlements. So these are the bigger aspects of housing. But based on what I have tried to convey, research should also be focused on new zoning and building bylaws, which should be developed that can help the creation of settlements that can respond to the problems posed by climate change and any future pandemics. I think as far as the individual house is concerned, we have many prototypes. Some of them are good prototypes. But the larger aspects, especially the research aspects, need to be understood, promoted, and supported. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Arif Saab, for your wonderful remarks. It was insightful and it was an experience for all of us. And now I would like to introduce our first panel of the day. And for that, I would like to welcome Mr. Ali Akbar, Senior Knowledge Management at Karandaaz, to moderate this session, discussing the regulations and financing opportunities and challenges. Mr. Ali Akbar has been involved in various research studies and data gathering exercises in the domain of financial inclusion for SMEs and individuals in Pakistan. Prior to Karandaaz, he was associated with the Pakistan Microfinance Network as head of research and the Ministry of Finance, Government of British Columbia as a tax policy analyst. His areas of interest include public finance and public-private partnerships. Now I'll be handing over the mic to Ali to continue this.
Thank you, Hassan. This panel is really about how regulations can unlock green financing in the housing market. The panel will discuss pressing economic issue of how supply can be stimulated to meet the growing demand for low-income housing through effective regulations that can unlock existing mode of financing and deepening of capital markets. So Dr. Shamshad has already given us the key facts and figures that there's a 12 million unit gap between demand and supply. There's a low mortgage GDP to ratio of 0.25, which is the lowest in the region. Bangladesh and India are quite higher. So before I quickly begin the panel, I would like to add two more key facts to put everything in perspective. In the recent floods, the housing loss was a staggering 1.6 trillion rupees. The case for a climate smart home is also based on costing. So it's 2,400 rupees per square foot for a climate smart home as compared to 4,400 rupees per square foot for a traditional home. This is the finding from our research. And this is the case for a buyer, not to mention the massive tonnage of carbon emissions that goes down through climate resilient housing. Now, we have a very rich set of speakers and stakeholders that I will introduce one by one. We have Mohammad Shehzad Khan. He's the head of business and products at Pakistan Mortgage Refinance Company. He has over 2 decades of experience in advising, arranging, and structuring debt and equity markets for government and corporates under project finance and capital market issuances. He's working closely with the World Bank. From the platform of PMRC, he's launched many innovative financial products to promote affordable housing in the country. Prior to PMRC, he served as the head of investment banking at JS Global and head of syndication and debt capital markets at the National Bank of Pakistan. We also have thus Emma Ahmed, who is the director at Altair International. Altair is a leading UK-based consultancy and advisory firm focused on affordable housing. Emma is a sustainable urban development specialist with over 20 years of experience of living and working in Asia. She has 13 years of experience in developing and delivering international programs with a focus on affordable housing financed by European Commission, ADB, World Bank, and FCDO. She has been responsible for investment origin in green affordable housing ecosystem businesses and projects across all Asia. Joining Emma and Shehzad is Mr. Jamshed Merhomji. He is the CEO of Trillis Housing Finance Limited, a licensed digital Sharia compliant housing finance company. I believe one of the 3 in Pakistan. Trillis was established in 2020. And it is at a stage where, having completed the product market fit and deployed loans with a meaningful repayment history, it's ready to scale. So it'll be very exciting to learn from him as well. And then lastly, we have Mr. Ramiz Memon. He's a chief risk officer at SAFCO Support Foundation, which is a microfinance entity which does low-cost house financing. Ramiz is chief risk officer, as I mentioned, with 9 years of experience with expertise in compliance functions, risk management, policy development, and strategic planning. He has worked on multiple projects throughout his career and is currently working on product development on housing finance in SAFCO. It's designing, execution, and continual improvement in product in accordance with the market demand. Now I'll turn to my panelists, and just so that we don't run over time, I would request them to sort of keep their comments and remarks to 5 minutes. We'd be very grateful for that. I'll start with you, Jamshed. So what has been Trillis's experience in the housing market with respect to innovations in the market? So we are aware of your hypothecation model with a builder and a borrower, and that you also have co-lending arrangement with banks. So tell us, is the market ready for such initiatives in the green housing market?
Thanks, Ali. So I guess just for context for everyone, Trellis is an organization that does both on balance sheet, lending, as well as off balance sheet solutions, such as these products that you were mentioning earlier. We're a licensed housing finance company like any other NBFC. We have capacity to be able to, lend on our balance sheet. But one of the things that we noticed very early on when starting Trellis is just the very capital intensive nature of housing finance, and the ability to be able to scale the value of our impact in terms of creating an entire sort of digital lending infrastructure. It was that we could supplement that on balance sheet impact with also being able to share digital loan packets that have gone through the end-to-end verification steps that we would be otherwise going through for our own origination, and then taking them through to the underwriting stage. And then just before actually originating and putting them on our balance sheet, sharing it with, partner banks to effectively evaluate our loan packet and then decide whether they want to take the loans on our own balance sheet or not within a period of 5 to 7 days. It was to, of course, improve our own credit learnings as well as of course to increase the impact that Trellis could make in terms of increasing more lending, than just what we could support on our own balance sheet. This has been something which there have been several learnings, I think, with the partner banks that we've worked with in 2022. There is definitely, I think, more work that needs to be done in terms of being able to interact with banks in a digital capacity, something which, some incumbents, struggle with at the moment. There's also, I feel, more needed from an overall sort of centralization perspective of focus on, working across various aspects of the bank to make sure that they are comfortable with the underwriting proposals that come through from a partner organization, rather than, trying to replicate the entire underwriting process themselves again when receiving the packets. And I think those are probably some of the things that are slowing down the progress of this mortgage as a service type model. But having said that, if we flip gears and if we focus on our own on balance sheet mortgage origination, and this is effectively just having built a digitally mature financial institution that can basically maneuver through the complexities of being able to issue, housing finance. I tell everyone in the world that no matter what part of the world you're in, housing finance is not an easy retail lending product. You're talking about wherever you go in the world, you're talking about 4 to 6 weeks minimum in terms of, turnaround times. There's, 6 different processes, 15 sub-processes, anywhere between 75 to 90 tasks that need to be completed by 8 to 9 different, individuals, some internal, some external to the organization. So it's an immensely complex product to be able to actually manage. What we do is we effectively have created the infrastructure, to be able to actually lend in a very, cost-effective manner, in an efficient manner, with strong risk management controls and practices. And continuously, as a result of that, innovation, we're able to come up with new product variations wherever possible. One of the things that we were looking at as an example, which has actually been very successful, is partnering with developers more upfront. So from the point of time when a developer has secured a piece of land and secured their NOCs for being able to actually construct a housing society, and between that point and between the point where the units could be actually mortgageable, there is a need for bridge financing for those developers to be able to start up their construction financing for affordable housing. And I think through building very strong relationships with certain developers and housing suppliers, we're able to actually now unlock that capital much earlier on in the sort of real estate supply chain, and as a result of that, increase the pace at which the affordable housing can be produced. With regards to whether this can be applicable for green housing or not, absolutely. Engaging with the developers upfront means that you can also work with them in terms of incentivizing them to make the right choices. Rather than spending X million in terms of electric pylons and in terms of non-geodesic designs and with which they're building the units, you can influence those decisions up front, put in place the proper greywater reuse solutions that need to be done. All of these decisions up front can have a material impact on the green housing effect of any housing society that's made. So from our perspective, I think it's working with those developers upfront and really promoting those green solutions through which these new societies get made, and then hopefully sets a precedent for others to also work with us in the future to sort of replicate and scale this impact.
Excellent, thank you. So we'll turn to Emma now. So Emma, you have a very rich experience. You have a global experience. You know about the Asia market. You were involved with REAL, I believe, which has done financial interventions across the globe. Can you tell us which markets are similar to Pakistan given the state of its financial sector and housing regulations? And what sort of interventions aimed at bridging the supply-demand gap worked in those markets, especially with regard to climate-resilient housing? What can Pakistan learn from those markets?
Thanks so much, Ali. Yeah, pleasure to be with everyone today. This is a really good question and perhaps not a simple answer as we would hope. I think many of the countries that are similar to Pakistan, so for example, Nigeria in Africa, perhaps the likes of Indonesia and Southeast Asia, are grappling with very much the same issues that Pakistan is grappling with. I would say that Nigeria has a lot of similarities in terms of its structure from a policy and regulatory framework, from its governance and political setup. And so that's probably a good one to use as an example. One of the systems that was set up in Nigeria was an institution which was developed from scratch called Family Homes Fund, whereby I guess Altair was involved in structuring that institution to attract financing from DFIs and overseas investors. And one of the things that we find primarily is an issue with attracting finance into housing and real estate in general across all geographies is the governance structures need to be really sound, and accountability and systems and processes in place for reporting pretty strong. So I think that's what gives DFIs more confidence and comfort in investing. So if you want to look up Family Homes Fund in Nigeria, that's a good example. It doesn't actually deliver anything specific relation to green housing. It's primarily being focused on affordable housing, but there's nothing to say that you can't, in the same way that Jimshade was talking about with Trellis, incorporate upfront all of the sort of criteria that you would require for an institution like that to receive investment in and then onward lend. I think Trellis is basically doing a similar sort of structure in Pakistan, and probably has taken a good step or two further in terms of the digitization aspect. So I can really see that taking up. If I just can comment on some of the things that I've observed in terms of the ecosystem itself, I think one of the things that I've noticed across geographies, not just in Asia, but in other places, is that many of these organizations, governments, private sector work very in siloed ways. So housing developers only deal with housing. They don't think about the energy piece. They don't think about the water piece in the way that they should do. Water providers or clean water providers and sewage providers, infrastructure, don't think about how they can improve the way that they connect up to housing. And I think this is something, an area that we need to look at improving, is breaking down those barriers between silos and ensuring that our investment is a more holistically designed investment, and that we look at holistic ecosystem investments. So when we're investing in, say, a developer, we need to know that there's also an end user finance provider. And when we've got those two in place, then we have a much more viable investment in a country or a company. And what I would say about Pakistan that's so great is that while we're still in early stages, we have a number of those ecosystem players in place. They're still growing and still young, but that's a great opportunity for investors to come in, and for the likes of, say, Karandaaz, BII, UKEF, and many others to really consider, like, we have now got these puzzle pieces here in Pakistan, from developer to green housing construction technologies, to green end user providers, and an investment that is self-reinforcing in a positive way like that is a great investment, is what I would say. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Emma. We understand that you and Jamshed have other commitments and will break off. So thank you. We are very grateful for both to the both of you.
Thank you so much for having us.
I'll now turn to Shehzad, who represents PMRC. So Shehzad, PMRC recently issued first of its kind Sharia compliant domestic bond or Sukuk in 2021. Such steps can lead to the deepening of the capital markets and provide liquidity to the housing market. As a next step, would PMRC be issuing mortgage-backed securities in the market? And I have another question for you, which is a follow-up. As a lender, how does PMRC see refinancing of the low-cost portfolio of housing loans based on prefabricated housing portfolio? And what are the opportunities and acceptable risks along with the security structure that would be acceptable in such cases?
Thank you, Ali. For your first question regarding the MBS, market is not ready really to take the MBS correctly. So there are various challenges which I want to talk about. One is the supply side challenge regarding the availability of those mortgage loans which can be bought from the primary mortgage lenders, and then we can securitize those loans. So there's one challenge. Another challenge is demand side issue, whether such securitized mortgages can be absorbed in the capital market. So if I take you to the mortgage market structure of Pakistan, we have around 200 billion outstanding portfolio of mortgages, in which 50% is MPMG and 50% is business as usual loans. So we all know that in MPMG, there are two aspects regarding the pricing. One is the fixed price that comes from the customers, and the other leg is the subsidy part which comes from the government. And this subsidy part can be delayed. We don't know if government keeps that subsidy continued in the foreseeable future. So we cannot, securitize that MPMG portfolio right now, because there might be a cash flow mismatch challenge if we securitize that portfolio. Secondly, that remaining 100 billion, which is as business as usual. So we think that it would be very, very hard to get that portfolio from the banks, especially that this mortgage market is dominated by the Islamic banks, who does not have alternate assets available to invest, such as PIBs and T-bills. There are very limited capacity of the government to issue that sukuks, which can be absorbed by the Islamic banks. So they naturally tend towards taking the mortgage loans on the balance sheet because they are lucrative, K plus 3% or so. So with this and the ADRs of around 50%, I don't think so any bank would sell their mortgage portfolios to PMRC, enable for us to actually issue the mortgage-backed securities. Now the third challenge is the demand side challenge from the capital market. In the capital market, mostly banks are active in purchasing or investing in the corporate sukuks and corporate bonds. And it doesn't make any sense to me that on the one hand, banks are selling their portfolios to PMRC and invest the securitized portfolio indirectly. So on one hand, you are basically offloading your balance sheet and from the advances side, and you are investing in the investment side. So that does not make much sense for me. So in short, MBS is not a very good instrument to go for the market right now. Now your second question on the prefabricated houses. First, prefabricated houses are actual need of the hour in Pakistan. and provides several benefits such as low cost. It promotes circular economy in which we can repair, reuse, and recycle the materials. It certainly minimizes waste and increase efficiency. Uh, Now let's talk about the challenges of prefabricated houses in Pakistan. Number one is the psychological barrier. Rural people prefer brick and mortar model, and it will take time, to change their mindset to go for this prefabricated houses actually. Secondly, the banks rely on the comfort for appreciating land prices in the country, so that whatever after 10 or 15 years, they know that the land prices and building prices keeps on increasing. So in case of any eventuality, they get the money back in any case. Which may not be the case for prefabrication houses, and I tell you why. Because under the prefabrication model, the entire house, apart from the land, gets not the legal mortgage on it, but hypothecation charge on it. And because these are movable properties, and if we talk about the depreciation rate of a movable property, that stands around 20 to 25%. With that depreciation rate, I mean, the entire house can be depreciated into 4 to 5 years. So that brings the major challenge for the banks, because if they cannot provide the long-term facility to the low-income people, then their affordability will be severely impacted. So that is the major challenge for the banks. So this is the one aspect. The other aspect is the monitoring of the bank.
Sorry, if I can jump in here.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree that a different solution needs to be provided to a low-income borrower, and perhaps a different product? So our research shows that a low-cost house can be built at a significantly lower price than a normal brick and mortar. And so comparing sort of a green unit to a traditional home. So the square foot cost is lower, and the total cost of a 5 marla home comes to about 1.6 to 2 million. So if the tenure is shorter, will the bank still not be at comfort with the tenure?
No, if the tenants are lower, then definitely bank will be at a comfort. Now it depends on one factor, whether land is available and title is clean. So at least banks can drive the comfort from the land. The land of the customer is there, and he will not walk away. But if the land is not there, I mean, or if the titles are not clean, then tomorrow a borrower can dismantle the house and go away. So that's the major risk for the banks. So unless a third party guarantee is provided, banks will not enter into this trajectory. That is my point. So monitoring is another aspect that banks need to do in case of prefabricated houses, because in the traditional model, banks know building is there, it will not go away anywhere, right? It's immovable property. But prefabricated are movable, and a person can dismantle it and go away. So that's the major challenge.
Okay, but this is quite understandable and a very good point. All right, thank you, Shehzad. So we now turn to Ramiz, who's representing SAFCO, a microfinance company operating in Sindh. So Ramiz, SSF is one of the largest MFIs operating in Sindh, with concentration in the rural areas. It has experience in housing. We would like to hear from you about the challenges that are faced by, by entities such as SAFCO in the housing finance space. What are the challenges, and what sort of loans are you providing to your targeted population, given that there's a huge demand and supply gap all over the country, and you can sort of be specific to since SAFCO is concentrated over there.
Thank you,
Ali Akbar for this question. My voice is clear, right? Can
Yes,
you hear me?
yes, 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 yes.
Thank you, Ali Akbar, for this question. SAFCO Support is a leading NBFC operating in 12 districts of Sindh with 90% outreach in rural areas with 60 branches network with diversified products. SAFCO, from the development perspective, have implemented multiple housing projects in 1992, in 2010, in post-flood situations by constructing the model villages and houses in different districts in Sindh. Recently, as NBFC, we have initiated the housing finance loan product from last year in partnership with PMRC. What we have experienced in the phase of housing product planning, product development, product design, and execution, that the major challenge for the execution of the product in the rural areas is the housing products are not designed in accordance with the need of the microfinance borrower, specifically in rural areas. There are multiple challenges to the borrowers on ground availing the housing loans from the banks and NBFC, and we all are aware about the demand. Land titling issues, which is very high in comparison with Punjab in Sindh province. The culture of transmission of titling is not being built in Sindh. There is a practice of property sale purchase on the basis of sales deed document of stamp paper without any proper register transfer mechanism. The majority of the houses structures are not approved by Sindh Building Control Authority, and there is no any awareness of work completion certificates on other formalities in rural areas. Now, firstly, these microfinance borrowers already having no any access to commercial banks for financing, but due to these challenges, these clients are even not unable to get the desired loans from MFIs as well. And now, on the another hand, from institution perspective, such issues create the credit risk for MFIs as well to disperse the large ticket size loans in terms without such documentation, and the risk appetite of the MFIs does not allow the disbursement with unsecured lending with the conventional social guarantee model of MFIs, which is currently adopted. Secondly, in continuation with this, I want to add one more challenge, that is the awareness of housing finance in rural areas. What we have experienced in our operational areas, due to above challenges, the semi-urban and urban markets are the only targeted by the banks, but the MFIs for the marketing and awareness campaigns and the housing product is not promoted in rural areas, due to which the borrowers which are compliant and having the authentic documents are eliminated from this housing products offered by the MFIs. Even the awareness of the housing product finance does also lacks in the institution as well. As there is a new product in the market, there is a different risk management framework in terms of loan appraisal, cash flow analysis, documentation, identification and demand. And also it involves the estimate cost of constructions. Mostly the institution of a staff is not upgraded or hired to specifically for this portfolio with the specific allocation of the priority to housing. So most of the borrowers who approach the MFIs are eliminated due to lacking of this. Well, SAFCO has a designated designed its product considering all these facts, the actual situation on ground, and set an appetite and limits of finance in accordance with the land titling, availability of documents, and borrower appraisal, and the loan limit is subject to the successful rating of the borrower in the risk analysis model. The second challenge in the housing finance for the microfinance sector is the regulatory framework for NBFCs. And we all are aware that approximately 62% of the population is in the rural areas, and in Sindh it's around 47%. And recently, the existing rules and regulations for specific for the microfinance companies which are operating as NBFC are somehow silent and are not comprehensively covering the aspects of housing finance as guidelines mainly for the microfinance in promoting the housing portfolio, specifically in the rural areas. Though in the last years, the NBFC's lending exposure limits were enhanced by the regulator, But this is not enough to promote the housing, mainly in rural areas. We believe that there should be a specific regulatory framework and risk management framework for the NBFCs who provide guidance, who provide guidelines to NBFCs, along with the assigning of the specific compulsory exposure in the housing portfolio of NBFCs, and also devise a framework for the new market entrants as well in the housing sector in Pakistan and give some relaxations in it. With the MFI
Sorry, you're breaking off,
and the
Ramiz.
high cost of delivery. Well, everyone. Sorry, can you hear me?
We lost you. We lost you a while back. Can you please repeat what you just said?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, yes. I think there's an internet issue. I'm turning off my camera.
Oh, that's not good.
Well, I was on the third issue, which is the high cost of funds. Well, everyone is aware about the recent economic situation.
Hello,
Of
Ramiz.
the
We lost you at high cost of funds. Hello, can you hear us?
So it's clear now. My voice is clear now.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Well, the microfinance borrower who is already at the line of the poverty with the uncertain cash flow, and it is the highly vulnerable for the climate effect, is not able to bear the high cost of financing for the housing. Cost of delivery of this product in comparison to the other products is comparatively high. Promoting these products on the break-even cost. This is a very key challenge where there is a need for policy design and reforms to minimize the cost of funds. Well, Ali Akbar, is my sound clear?
If you could go over the cost of funds bit again, please.
Sorry, can you repeat?
We lost you at cost of funds.
Okay. I was trying to explain that the cost of funds for the housing product in Pakistan is high very recently. And also the cost of delivery of the product is high. Considering this economic situation, the microfinance borrower who's already at the line of the poverty with the uncertain cash flow is the highly vulnerable for the climate effect is not able to bear the higher cost of financing for the housing. Even the MFIs are facing the same challenge on the ground, and the cost of delivery of this product in comparison to the other products offered by MFIs is comparatively high. And as a social responsible institute, the institutions like SAFCO are promoting these products on the break-even cost. This is the very key challenge where there is a need for the policy design and reforms to minimize the cost of funds. Well,
so do you
I would
think an
like to add the
arrangement with
government.
do you think an arrangement with the likes of PMRC, which was specifically created as a secondary mortgage provider, will it help with liquidity and cost of funds?
Well, this is possible, and this is positive as well. We have also launched this product in partnership with PMRC. But the recent economic situation, the KIBOR rates, the PMRC's rate is much subsidized, but it needs some more subsidy in it because we are dealing with the poor people, as I earlier explained. These are the people which are remaining in poverty, and this is some sort of long-term product we are going to give them. So there is a need for some subsidized cost in this in support with the government or some other organizations. Well, I would like to add the government planning sector, which are earlier explained that by some other participants as well, which are, we feel that, not remained relevant and were positive due to the non-acceptance of the built-in housing or prefab housing. The government should also develop the model houses by planning and understanding, but these must be constructed as per the need and demand of the communities. From the policy perspective, I will suggest that SECP may come forward in promoting the housing finance to develop the framework that encourages the new housing finance companies, and also devise the policy framework for MFIs that provide the guidelines to MFIs to generate the healthy housing portfolio in rural areas with the risk management framework designed by the regulator. And I believe that this will give confidence to the sector in promoting the housing finance. At last, I will suggest that in the recent flood situation in Sindh, there is a huge demand of housing in the phase of rehabilitation, mainly in the rural areas. And most of the people have started renovation and repairing of their houses at their own, because currently there is no any project or program has been seen by the government to support the housing rehabilitation. The government of Sindh is initiating the project on housing, and by granting the rupees 300,000 grant amount to the completely damaged houses beneficiary and rupees 50,000 to the partially damaged household beneficiary, which we feel is not sufficient and shall fulfill the demand of the housing in rural areas. Also, the World Bank is interested in the housing renovation for the flood affected areas and have allocated the grant funds for the housing rehabilitation in the flood affected areas, and also allocated the funds for the housing finance in these areas. I believe that this is the right time and opportunity for the stakeholders and market players, as there is a need for subsidized financing model for housing finance, specifically for the MFI sector, because this is the sector who has the outreach in rural areas and access to the population with the data and analysis with their existing framework. And that subsidized financing model should be governed by central bank and jointly with SECP, onboarding PMRC, who is the wholesaler and having vast experience of housing, and also onboarding the Pakistan Microfinance Investment Committee as well.
But just one question at the end. So, I mean, we have to eventually move from grants and subsidies to a very sort of a market-oriented solution. So, given that a prefabricated home costs lower, and is a better fit for a low income family or an individual. Is that the sort of product that is more relevant for MFIs given the low ticket sizes?
Well, I think these Mr. Shehzad had also responded on this prefabric homes, but actually the
So
issue is the
he
mindset
spoke
of the
about
people.
a short. He spoke about the fact that these units can be taken apart, and then that creates a discomfort for the banks. So is that something that MFIs will face as well?
Actually, the issue is mainly the acceptance of the rural population of the prefabric houses. What we have experienced through our survey, through our product design, we had also gone through this model in collaboration with PMRC. The rural communities are not in the interested to accept this prefabric house as a model house in their villages. They are much interested in renovation of their houses and designing their own houses with their own traditional model, conventional model, and also they are focused on construction of houses available on the locally available material, which is usually used in villages. So the actual thing is the mindset of the rural communities, which is required to be changed to promote these prefabric houses.
I think that this mindset is prevalent across, or it's seen in urban areas as well. So is a major pain point when it comes to these prefabricated or climate smart homes. So thank you, Ramiz. You raised some valuable points. So I'll just wrap this up very quickly. We've learned that more work needs to be done, where NBFCs like Trillis, they're collaborating with banks and smaller FIs, financial institutions, and like Trillis can do innovative underwriting. They're digitally oriented. They're ready to scale, but they need support. Partnership with developers is very important, as is learning about the low-income borrower and a good fit for a product. Bridge financing for developers came up. That is part of the puzzle as well. From Emma, we learned that there are markets similar to Pakistan where regulation and financial hurdles are concerned. She mentioned Nigeria has a lot of similarities with Pakistan, and that housing, sort of requires a holistic approach. And a builder cannot be relied upon achieving all of them. So, for instance, housing is a community issue. It requires sanitation, utilities, and water. And so we have to acknowledge that housing consists of myriad issues and a diverse set of stakeholders. The hypothecation model should and can work, especially because banks need comfort. The point that Shahzad made about prefabricated homes being taken apart, that sort of creates a complication and another hurdle where banks' charge is concerned. So if the tenure is long, but the home can be taken apart and the borrower can disappear, that requires some thinking. Then for MFIs, there's cost of borrowing is a challenge. Liquidity is a challenge. Risk management, especially there's regulatory hurdles that we know about, such as land titling and repossession. So we came up with a lot of problems, but encouraging solutions as well. So, this was a very fruitful discussion in that regard. So I'd like to thank the panelists for their valuable time and rich set of comments. We are very grateful to them. Unfortunately, because we are running behind time, we won't be able to take a lot of questions, or any for that matter. And I'd now like to hand it over to Hassan to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for the interesting discussion. And now I would like to welcome our second panel of the day. And for that, now I would like to welcome Dr. Sana Malik, who is a board member REAL, to moderate this session to discussing climate smart, low-cost housing solution providers. Dr. Sana Malik has diverse teaching and research experience. She has initiated collaborative initiatives for housing research and conducted knowledge sessions on national and international platforms. As a policy expert, she has also served as a short-term consultant with World Bank for a housing finance project. And with that, I would hand over the mic to Ms. Sana to continue this discussion.
Thank you, Hassan. I'm audible?
Yes,
Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Let's welcome you all to the panel to discussions. I would like to welcome all of my presenters and participants to this exciting panel. We will begin with 4 short presentations from the actors who are working on the pavilion of climate smart low-cost housing. After the presentations, we will go straight into the panel discussion and ask these housing experts to share light on their challenges they face and opportunities they see. So let me introduce Mr. Nabil. Nabil Siddiqui is an innovator and social entrepreneur at heart, and he's currently leading and acting as CEO and co-founder of Modelist Tech, which is Pakistan-based clean tech startup pioneering in the affordable net zero housing. Siddiqui has been given multiple awards by UN for his social and environmental impact, and was part of Forbes 30 under 30 list in 2021. Then we have Mr. Joseph Langston from Base Baha'i Foundation, Philippines. He's the head of communications over there. BASE is a foundation that envisions providing alternative building solutions that enable the network of partners to build quality, socialized, and disaster resilient homes. Then we have Nimadullah Jan, who is the General Manager for Programs and Emergency Lead from BRSP, which is Balochistan Rural Support Program. It is one of the largest non-profit organizations in Balochistan committed to harness the potential of rural people to help themselves assuming control of the local development and improving their standard of living. With Mr. Jan, today we have been joined by Dr. Waqas Meher, who is closely working with BRSP to introduce climate resilient housing in communities in Balochistan in the light of recent floods. Then we have Mr. Jawad Aslam, who is the founder and CEO of Ansar Management Company. Jawad has 26 plus years of experience in US and Pakistan in both public and private sector with 16 years of specialization of affordable housing. Unfortunately, due to some time lagging, we don't have him right now. On her behalf, Ms. Suda Fatma will be presenting. So let's begin with the presentations. It is requested to all the presenters to present their work in 5 minutes. So let's begin with Nabil. Over to you, Nabil.
Thank you so much, Sana. Pleasure to be here. Let me just share my screen. All right, so Models Tech is a clean tech company that we started back in 2018. And the reason for forming a company like this was purely out of a social cause. And once we started looking at the social problems, these sort of environmental problems became more apparent. So we know that Pakistan needs a lot of houses and that shortage is growing over time. But we also realized that Pakistan has houses that are not energy efficient and they contribute a lot to global carbon emissions. At the same time, we don't have enough electricity or clean drinking water that we can provide for these new homes that we're planning on building. So we felt that technology would be the way to go about it. In terms of construction technology, our company focuses on affordable net zero housing. So we know that making housing sustainable is normally something that's more costly. So making that affordable is what we started focusing on. And the technology that we have reduces carbon emissions by 90% in terms of embodied carbon. And then in terms of cost, it's 20 to 30% lower than conventional housing in Pakistan. At the same time, the gray structure takes 1 day to assemble, and the lifespan is similar to a concrete or conventional home in Pakistan. In terms of its other features, the houses are extremely energy efficient. So just to give you sort of a physical sort of experience, if you walk inside the home on a very hot summer day, you would notice a temperature drop of 10 to 15 degrees Celsius without any air conditioning or fans, just through natural ventilation. So that's something that most of our end users find very, very compelling and something that they really prefer. As you normally see in Punjab and hotter climates in Pakistan, that people end up sleeping on the roof at night. So that's something that we wanted to sort of work on in terms of giving better thermal comfort of the home. So you can give them really good quality homes, but if they're so hot and they cannot afford air conditioning, it doesn't really give them that sort of dignified living that they need. So in terms of other features, the homes are safer in terms of fire and earthquake safety, and they conform with international building codes. So just to give you a comparison of the carbon emissions, it's 50 times lower than a conventional home in Pakistan of similar size. We've also received the EDGE Advanced Building Certification, which is provided by the World Bank Group. And I would just want you to focus on the water savings and the energy savings part here. So these are our energy savings without solar. Once we add solar, this goes up to 90%. Water savings within the cost threshold that we have, while keeping the homes affordable, we are still able to provide 48% water savings. And embodied energy is something that can vary depending on if we're using some vernacular materials, some local materials for construction, which we had in this case. Otherwise, it goes up to 70 to 80% as well. So why is energy and water so critical? Because if we're looking in the context of Pakistan, where we don't have either of the two, not enough of them, this becomes something very important, and it's something that perhaps you don't need to build using a new technology. This could be done with concrete homes. And as I'm sure Jawad will share soon, or his team, that they've achieved that using conventional building methods, which is very, very impressive. And perhaps that's something we should focus on for homes that are not built using new construction technologies, using some passive strategies around them. So just to show you like what our homes look like. Yes, these homes are built in a factory, but we've worked really, really hard on localizing the design. So if you look at them, they look and feel a bit like a Pakistani home or a conventional concrete structure. And at the same time, we've used some local building materials. So red bricks, for example, have been used in the front facade for architectural purposes, but mostly to localize the design. And that's something that the users appreciate. But in other cases where we build more modern looking homes, they also appreciate that quite a lot without any local materials. So coming back to the passive strategies I was discussing, we use an ancient technique which has been used in Pakistan before, a wind catcher. So if you see for the small 3-marla home, each room has cross ventilation, and there's a wind catcher in the central lounge, which disperses natural ventilation throughout all the rooms throughout the entire house. So that really helps cool down the homes naturally without a much added cost, honestly. And that's something I think we can incorporate in conventional structures as well. And that's something that we can work on. This is another passive design where the entire sort of structure acts as a wind catcher. And
Okay,
apart
Nabil,
from
just reminded to complete in time.
just two more slides very quickly. All right, thank you. So just from a finance perspective, another thing we've done is that we've bundled solar within the housing mortgage product, and Trellis has been super helpful in trying to help us do that. So another thing that we can work on from a finance perspective. And green buildings in Pakistan have an added advantage which we perhaps don't talk about enough, is that because they're saving so much carbon emissions, we can work towards carbon offset trading and further reduce the price of these homes by $1,000 to even $1,500 in some cases. And I will end it there, Sana. Thank you.
Thank you, Nabil, for this wonderful presentation. Now will I request Mr. Joseph from Base Baha'i Foundation to present us to your work. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you. So again, I'm Joseph Lansang. I head the communications of Base Baha'i Foundation. We're based in the Philippines. Thank you for Karandaaz and Real for inviting us in this webinar. So today I'm going to share with you a building technology using a material that many countries have been using already for many years, but with addition of more research, more testing, and proper technology, we have made it a better material for a permanent structure to answer the needs of our time. And that material is actually bamboo. So again, I work for an organization called BASE, and BASE is an NGO that was established 8 years ago, and we develop alternative building technologies so that our partners can provide comfortable, affordable, resilient, and eco-friendly houses with social impact. Right now, our focus is on the development of a building technology that we call the cement bamboo frame technology, which is actually a prefabricated shear wall system using load-bearing bamboo with metal connections and mortar cement plaster. So this system is tested for resistance against earthquakes, typhoons, fire, and insect infestation. And it's actually a product of decades-long bamboo building practices and research around the world. So using international standards on bamboo testing, grading, and structures, actually there are 3 standards by the International Standards Organization on bamboo. We were able to develop a bamboo-based building technology that can resist typhoons of up to 250 km/h wind speeds of typhoons and can resist any types of earthquake. And it has also a fire rating of a conventional home. We were also able to, through research, solve the problems of insects and insect infestation and deterioration. It's also accredited by the Innovative Technologies Accreditation of Innovative Technologies for Housing in the Philippines after it passed a tedious process of structural analysis, testing, and proof of concept. Next slide there. Okay, so why do we use bamboo? First, aside from its sustainable characteristics of bamboo, it actually benefits a lot of bamboo farmers along the process of the value chain and all the people working along the treatment process and producing or processing the bamboo. And actually 20% of the total housing cost goes directly to the bamboo supply, benefiting farmers and bamboo treatment workers. Second, bamboo grows very fast, so it can actually grow 10 centimeters per day, so that you can harvest them after a maturity of 3 to 5 years, compared to if you use timber, which might take you 30 to 45 years. And it's very widely available, especially in tropical countries where housing gap is also huge. Based on the life cycle study that we conducted for this material, it has 60% less carbon emission compared to conventional construction. And because of its low thermal mass, it releases heat and cools down quickly, especially at night where temperature needs to be optimal for more restful nights. So as you can see,
just a reminder to speed up as we are running late. Yeah.
Okay, so as you can see, the house looks like any other conventional houses from the outside, but you can see the bamboo when you get inside the houses. So you can clad the internal walls or leave them exposed for more texture or warm look. So actually this design is for 2 reasons. One is to protect the bamboo from external elements like UV rays and rains, which is actually the secret for making bamboo houses durable. And please note that, like in countries where this kind of technology originated, like it's in South America, particularly in Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador, they have built houses with this technology traditionally, and they have at least 100 to 200 years, and they are still actually functioning. Okay. To date, we've built 1,200 houses in the Philippines and 300 houses in Nepal. Many of these houses have been tested against typhoons and earthquakes, and we are working with different NGOs, municipalities, and private developers in the Philippines to build 1,000 more. We have certified workers and professionals, architects, and engineers through continuing professional development program, and we've established 5 bamboo supply facilities in 14 communities. Okay, and we've also built other structures apart from houses, like orphanages, community centers, livelihoods centers, and treatment facilities. I think this is the final slide. So last year we opened the Base Innovation Center, which is actually a hub for international researches on alternative building technologies, especially with the bamboo, working with local international universities and institutions around the world. And our objective is to improve the technology and make it more accessible to everyone, provide trainings to more professionals and community workers. And so I think that's all that I could say in 5 minutes. Happy to receive your questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph, for this wonderful presentation. Now I would welcome Nematullah and Dr. Waqas from BRSP to come and present their work. Over to you, Nematullah and Waqas.
Please let me share my screen. Can you see the screen?
We can, but there's no presentation. We can just see the screen of your computer. Can you please open the presentation? Would you like us to run the presentation for you?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Mehrunisa or Hassan, can you please share his presentation?
Nemat Saab, can you just stop sharing? Maybe I can share the presentation.
Okay.
Is it stopped?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Dr. Upas, what is comfortable to you? We should run the presentation, or you would be?
Both scenarios are fine. Let me share the screen actually,
Yeah, please
because
share.
it's open now.
Yeah,
So,
please share.
can you guys see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So, Nemat Saab, you can start now.
This is a 3D view of the structure, which we call earthbag structure. Go to the next one, please. Why the earthbag structure? Earthbag structure is being proposed that utilizes maximum existing material available in the rural areas. Secondly, this is highly energy efficient, creates thermal mass or insulating barrier, which my colleague will be discussing in the coming slides. Third, extremely durable and resistant to fire and natural disasters such as floods and earthquake. And the next one is that it is highly economical, that one room kitchen and a latrine costs just PKR 450,000 K. If you are extending to two families, then this cost will increase to 650,000 K. And this structure can be constructed only in 6 days. And the last thing that is very important for this structure, that normally for operation and maintenance cost, the inhabitants of the village, they can do themselves. Go to the next slide, please. For the structure, I will request Dr. Waqas Saib, if he can present, please.
Thank you, Nemat Saab. So thank you very much, Dr. Sana, and all the participants for giving this us this opportunity. So for this structure, this is a structure actually started to be constructed in 2001, 2000, in the 2001, 2002, and then this was proposed by an Iranian-American architect, Nader Khalili. So this is replicated in many countries also as a relief work. And then while we were looking at some solution for Balochistan, so we have several types of disasters here. We have floods, we have earthquakes. So we want some structure which is suitable for all type of disasters, and also the structure which can actually provide the comfortable temperatures so that people have to use less energy to comfort themselves, especially in the extreme cold or extreme hot environment. And here the main materials we have to use is the mud with the lime. So 5% of the lime, and then we mix it with the mud, and we have to fill them in the polypropylene bags, which are easily available. And then we have to provide a reinforcement with the barbed wires. And and then we have to use the mud with the straw for the plaster. So we have to give plaster, we have to provide the plaster from internal side and also external side. There could be some other solutions for that to give the plaster as well, but using the mud with straw is more economical. And here you can see the proposed sizes for the living room. We propose a size of 12 feet diameters for the living room, a kitchen of 8 feet diameter, and the bathroom size of 6 feet diameter. And then we have calculated this cost 4.5 lakhs for this unit. Here you can see the layout, the plan of the proposed unit. Here there's one room, there's one bath and one kitchen. And then we have created a veranda for this. And then you can also see the section here, the height, the clear height in the section is also proposed. Initially, we have come up with a 2-room unit, and then now we are moving to the 1-room unit, but actually we have the plans, elevation sections, and all the technical details for the both. So we can actually construct the 2-room unit or the 1-room unit based on the family size and based on the finances. Here you can see how this actually works, that we have to fill the mud along with the lime in the polypropylene bags. And then we have to use the barbed wire for the reinforcement of these bags. And then this is in the circular form, so it will create a dome type shape. And this is one of the most stable shapes throughout the history. We have seen a lot of dome shapes which are very stable in earthquakes and all those conditions. Also, this structure was tested in Nepal at the earthquake of 7.6 Richter scale. So this can sustain even earthquakes. And the similar structure, same technique was adopted in Kashmir as well. With the help of Sasi Foundation, they have created some structures in Kashmir. Here you can see the 3D view. And we will be happy to share the technical details or answer your questions during the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Vikas and Nebutullah, for presenting this exciting work. Now I would request last panelist, Ms. Masouda Fatma, to present on behalf of Jawad Aslam. Ms. Masouda, are you here? Please unmute your mic. Ms. Maksouda, please unmute your mic.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, Sana. I just want to share with you my slide. Can you see?
It's just coming up. Yes, now we can see it.
Okay. Ms. Sana, we are the first developer in Pakistan who got EDGE certification. And you can see we started this process of getting certification in 2021 at the end of the year. And we got certification in February 2022. In this certification process, you can see we get 35% carbon reduction in materials, and we save water 42% by using low head shower, means by using low water flows. And then we save 34% energy using efficient energy devices. And so I want to share with you some challenges. You can see when we started with EDGE certification, basically we are traditional construction company. So our homes are concrete, bricks and mortar based. By keeping the traditional way of construction, we try to get maximum benefit of and serve climate. And when we apply for our initial projects, we just found that its cost was around $135 per unit that we bear. But Mr. Nabil will be familiar with that. In the previous version of Edge, it was possible to get certification with this pricing was easy, but now as they have updated their softwares, there are more requirements to be fulfilled. So we are facing challenges now for our future homes to be get certified. There are some issues like the entry point is a matter of money now, and our estimation is that it will be around $1,000. So it will be a huge burden on low income housing projects because if clients are there and they compare our low income housing projects to mainstream available homes options, then they will find it more costly than the regular options they have. So we should realize that the mainstream industry, mainstream developers should bring into this climate change challenge, or you can say in this movement. So when they will be doing the same thing to save the climate, so there will be difference. Customer can see the difference between mainstream prices and low income prices. But if we are just focusing on low income homes and want them to be climate resilient, then it will be difficult for customers. As you know, there is no acceptability. Even a customer don't want to go from traditional to more innovative and options like prefabricated homes, or as BRS pieces, earth bags structures, because we are working in the market and we are already having our societies in 6 cities.
Ms. Maqsooda, can you just, just speed up a little bit so that we can complete it timely?
Okay. I already informed you that customer don't give value to the climate resilient efforts. So there is need to educate people that how useful these things are, how badly our climate is affected, and what efforts we are making to make our homes climate smart is actually to serve our environment, and there is some value for that. So for this, we need to create awareness. Otherwise, the presence of low income sector in the climate resilience campaign, there is no use until the people are aware that what they are buying is actually contributing to their environment. So this is the biggest challenge, I think. And I also want to add that we are also working on wastewater treatment plant. In this regard, I have a request that our policymakers should focus on this, that if some societies are doing this, and they also be incentivized them, like Vasas, they can make such policies that can be benefited to those societies who are doing such kind of work. So this is the need of the time, that we should be focused and we should align the policies of all the departments, and all the developers should be on the same page. And so I will agree with Emma, as she said that we should be work as holistic background, rather than working on stand-alone positions. We should align our strategies, we should align our policies. All the government sectors should come up and align their policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Maqsooda, for your nice presentation. I would like to thank all of my respected panelists for their wonderful work and presentations. Now we'll start with the question and answer session. We recently just connecting with the latest discussion that Ms. Maqsooda has put on, that as a developer, you find a lot of challenges in maintaining the climate resilient housing, the target group is not very much familiar with this EDGE certification, and so are developers and local market as well. So you talked from the perspective of developer. I would like to ask Nabil, with the perspective of material supplier and as a material innovator in the local market of Pakistan, what challenges you have faced in the start, and after getting some of very great partnerships at the local and the international level. So over the journey, what the challenges at the start, and after some years right now, what are you facing, and what is your approach as from the perspective of Medalist Tech?
Right. Specific to the EDGE certification or any other building certification, normally the sort of materials that we're using are innovative in that sense. And the sort of database that they have, they don't have those materials, which is why we sometimes get a lower score in these certifications. But that's, I don't think it's an incentive for the end user, right? So when you're selling homes, in my experience, selling for 5-6 years now, sustainable housing in Pakistan, the first question is about the cost. And sustainability could be a nice to have for a lot of people, but a lot of people don't understand, don't care. And definitely they wouldn't pay extra for it. So that's been the primary challenge. And if you sort of lower the cost of green buildings, then it becomes more acceptable in that regard. And then if you further apply carbon offsets, it would become even more feasible for developers, but also for the end user, it will cost less. So I think that's the way to go. Yes, we should create more awareness about green buildings, especially at a policy level. One thing that I feel that we highly disregard is the amount of water and electricity we can save as a nation. And given our shortfalls in both of these areas, I think there needs to be more data on how much energy and water we're actually saving, so that we can drive that at a policy level more effectively and with more data, and perhaps subsidize greenhousing or give tax exemptions on green buildings in that manner. So these are the challenges that we're facing, because there's a lack of data in Pakistan. Policy is lagging a bit behind in a lot of areas. And then, of course, there's the mindset challenge, which we're trying to overcome with a more localized design, which I feel is very, very
so just
for
for information,
yeah.
your more market is at the local or in the international perspective, where Modernist Tech has got more clients?
So far, we're across 4 provinces in Pakistan. We have operational projects in 4 provinces. We're now starting to expand to Africa and South America, other different parts of the developing world. But primarily been focused on Pakistan. It has, over the years, we've seen more acceptance and the acceptance growth.
And which province has given the larger portfolio for the Modernist Tech? It is Punjab, Sindh?
Previously, it was Sindh, but now it's Punjab with the new projects. But also Gilgit-Baltistan has been very progressive. They're more accustomed to new technologies, I feel.
So what was the triggering point? Now Punjab is your portfolio. And other thing I would like to know, that you as well as Maqsooda has also mentioned that there's lack of policy. So if you both, I would come to you, Maqsooda, after that, that's how to create awareness. Have you gone to the government officials, presented them some work? Because, at everything comes to an end, but it comes to the government policies, because they are not facilitated. So how the enabling environment can be created by people, by the companies like Modelers and AMs who are actually working? So what the approach you are adopting to create an environment, enabling environment?
That's a very good question, and something I've thought a lot about. And if you look at it from Pakistan's perspective, we're one of the worst affected countries from climate change. And let's say we bring our carbon emissions to 0, would it actually make a difference to Pakistan? Perhaps not as much if other countries are not working together with us. So if Pakistan cannot really bring a change at a local level by cutting all its emissions, what's the advantage for Pakistan to sort of move towards green buildings? And that's where I think that the energy and the water equation really helps in policy making as well. So the work that Karandaaz is doing, I think it's very essential, and we should take it forward by more data-driven studies that could help convince policymakers now, okay, from a business perspective, let's not think about the environment for a second. From a business perspective, if your houses are saving X amount of energy, X amount of water, and the nation is, as a result, if we're building 150,000 homes a year, they're saving that much water and electricity, I think it would make sense to them. So perhaps
So
that's
if
something we
I
should
could
be
sum
talking
it
about.
up, you are directing that these policy think tanks must come forward and they should be multiplied in numbers, and they should be talking to the government on behalf of these kind of organizations who are committed for the climate resilient and sustainable housing. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Nabil, for your answer. I would like to pose this question same to the Joseph in context of Philippines, that what are your challenges, since the structure, the local market at certification and sustainability concept is not much renowned and understandable by the government officials in countries like Pakistan and developing countries. So what are your challenges, and how do you see to address them through the Base Baha'i Foundation? Please unmute, Joseph. Yeah.
Actually, I'm very happy to hear about these issues, not because that there are these issues that we're facing, but this is my first time to be exposed to Pakistan's housing environment, and it kinds of validate our challenges here as well, especially that we're focused on socialized housing. And you're right, it's the climate issues are not really one of the priorities for low-income families. They would rather accept the messaging in terms of how they would be able to save using these kinds of technology. So what we've learned over the past years is that in terms of education and campaign, that you use different kinds of messaging to address different types of people. Like developers would probably more keen on especially those developers or contractors that are becoming more conscious about the environment. They'd probably buy more into the idea of environment-friendly homes or climate-friendly homes. But for the families or the homeowners, what we would do is to emphasize on the cost savings that they would have in buying these houses. Like in the Philippines, we get a lot of typhoons every year. An average of 20 typhoons. Many of those are really strong. So what we would tell them is that when the next typhoon comes and your house gets destroyed, then you have to rebuild again, right? And if you do that every year, then in the long term, you'll have to pay more for it, right? Compared to investing really now into a disaster resilient homes. It would probably cost you more now, but in the long term, you'll save in the long term.
So you believe that is the most attractive feature that people are getting to get this, bamboo-based housing. So you mentioned about that Base Baha'i Foundation has delivered 1,200 houses. So what you see the perspective of Base Foundation in the next 5 years, how to add up the number of houses as compared to the housing shortage? Any figures you as a foundation have there in VN?
So we're a very lean organization. Like in the office, we're like 25 employees, and we really have a very ambitious targets. Like for we launched this coalition of partners, and our target is to build 10,000 homes in the next 3 years. And like as a technology provider, we need like a network of partners that would help us scale up this technology. So we have partners like other NGOs, Habitat for Humanity, for example. And that's why we were also able to build houses in Nepal through Habitat for Humanity. We're working with different municipalities and cities in the Philippines. And here in the Philippines, we have what we call the Balanced Housing Act, wherein 5% to 15% of the total housing costs or total project cost of the developers, high-rise developers, and high-end subdivisions should go to socialized housing. And that's what we're targeting now, to be able to convince those developers to use our technology for their balanced housing compliance.
Great. It is, very good to know that such a small organization with 25 employees, and they have such a high target of building 10,000 homes. So I wish you very best of luck, and thank you for your valuable feedback and knowledge over this matter. I would like to go to Mr. Nemulutula and Wakas about the earthquake. The earth-backed structure looks very wonderful and very innovative. So what you think that how much units can be built with this design, climate resilient design of housing, and in the light of the extent that the damage has been done to the by the floods to the population of the Balochistan?
Yes, Dr. Saab.
Yes, should I repeat my question?
Dr. Sana, I got your question. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, okay.
So how much units we can actually develop? We are initially targeting the cold areas in Balochistan. So, for example, Quetta, Kalat, these areas are the cold areas, and we need the construction very quick there. Because in the cold climate, we cannot actually do the construction. We need the local people to work on it. We have to train them, and this is a very easy process to train them. We can quickly train them, and they can construct it. We just need 1 or 2 persons to supervise them, to guide them. This relief work has to start very early, and later on we will focus on the districts like Nafiabad,
Wakas, your voice is not as clear. It's not so clear.
Okay, so I was saying that initially, can you hear me? Is this clear, the voice?
No, it's not still clear.
Hello, can you hear me? Is this clear?
I guess you just reconnect, because the voice is not clear to us. I can ask another question to another panelist, and you can just try to reconnect. Okay, Wakas?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Maqsuda, I will ask you that you talked about that the affordable housing units built by EMC were having a very good impact. So would you like to share the feedback and the response of the residents with your climate smart housing in terms of did they impacted their social life, their house design life, their internal life, their community life, anything? And you would like to share with us?
Actually, Sana, as I already told you that customers don't value the efforts we make for climate change. Now, when we go through those houses, they are very airy, they are cold in summers. Even in daytime, one of inspectors visited and found that those were very cool, though it was a bright sun in the summer. And even in the winter, you can feel in the house there is no such cool air in the homes. We are also using efficient water devices and assembly lights to reduce the energy cost. They are satisfied with that. But when it comes to the cost sharing or something like this, as I told you, in the future, we clearly can see that any effort to make our homes climate smart will cost us around $1,000. So they are not going to accept that. So when we compare our prices, I mean, with addition to that cost, definitely they are not going to bear. But now current residents are happy with the homes because they didn't pay much as an additional cost. It was very low, as like $135. So it doesn't matter to them. And with this cost, they are enjoying a good environment. And we have very all the facilities in our societies, like I already told you. we are also going to build wastewater treatment plant for society. We have their RO plants. We have parks in every block. We have a commercial center. All the facilities that other societies have in their routine standards. We have all the facilities and wide roads. So the environment is very good there, and customers are satisfied. But when it comes to climate change and
okay, I would like to just shift the question too, because I have in all the discussions the focus is on the finance. So we have Housing Building Finance Corporation in Pakistan. So is there any type of collaboration being done from the EMC with HBFC, or in the future you have?
We have collaboration with HBFC and as well with Trallies International. They are financing our homes. When it was a Prime Minister's scheme, so many of homes were sold on the HBFC and Trallies loans. It was a great response because we have built over 165 units in COVID scenario. So they all sold out. So we got a huge response in this regard.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, Waqas, thank you so much, Maqsuda. Waqas, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Please get back to that question. With this structure, how much units BRSP is looking forward to build, and what is the approach of government in this regard? How much they are cooperating, and what is the extent of cooperation?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sana. So we have presented this unit so far to a few of the organizations, and we are looking for the funding. We are planning to construct more than 1,000 units. Initial target will be the 4 districts, Khuzdar, Quetta, Ziyarat, and Harnai. Because of the cold climate, we need to construct the units very quickly in this climate. And later on, we can move to the Sobatpur, Nasirabad, Jafrabad. As we mentioned also for the structure, that the recent flooding has mainly affected the houses because the corner and the plinth was damaged very quickly, and the houses were not raised from the ground. So the water was there for a few days, maybe a few weeks, which actually caused the damage. But if we remove the corners like this structure, we can actually strengthen the structure. So that's the plan so far. And then we are looking forward to get some funding, and we are already working on one of the prototype unit in the BRSP site. And we will document this, the construction process of the unit. And hopefully it will be ready in 1 week or 10 days, and we can actually demonstrate it. We can show to the people that how the construction is started and how the process was completed.
Okay, that's great, Waqas, for this information. I just like to ask one other question in the same loop, that you mentioned about the cost is like highly economical. It's like 450,000 Pakistani rupee. So I would like, as you already mentioned, that you are looking for the funding. So is there any eligibility plan or payment plan has been devised, that how much of it is going to be paid by the target group you're looking for to build with, and how much the part is going to be played by the funder, and what would be the ownership status? Because at the end, many things just stuck in that context. So any discussions have been put forward for this aspect as well?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sana. For the owners, for the residents, actually we are just asking them to get involved in the process of construction. So we will actually teach them the skill so that they can help us to rebuild the same structure in the neighborhood, in the area. And we are also looking for some solution if we can actually have some area where we can uplift the area, we can raise it from the ground level, and then we construct the units there to avoid the future flooding, because some of the plain areas, the flood water stays there. We know that in Balochistan, you have the different slopes and altitude levels. I just give you example of Mastung. The average height in Mastung is 1,800 meters. So the water was there for maybe 2-3 days. but the altitude of Jafrabad is quite low, maybe 100 meters or 100 and something meters. And then the water stayed there for more than a month. So we have to also see that how we can actually raise the height and the level of this unit so that we can actually prevent it from the future flooding as well. So from the donors area, we will actually finance the whole unit, and then from the residents, from the owners, we will just support, seek the support in the construction process.
Okay, thank you, Vikas, for this valuable information. I would thank you all the panelists for their valuable time and sharing their wonderful work they are doing for the community. And to take 2-3 lessons from this session, that whatever you're doing in whatever capacity, but you are doing a great thing, and the impact is going to be there soon on a larger level. And I guess we need to have more enabling environment with the government to support these climate resilient and smart affordable housing, to have more sustainability in our local areas, in every city. And I guess it's like Karandaaz, there is also very important that these type of policy think tanks must be multiplied and must be integrated into the local authority systems as well, in every city, to see the real impact and application of these wonderful technologies we have been shared by our panelists. So thank you everyone for this session, and over to you, Hassan. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for this wonderful discussion. It was very informative for all of us. And now, first of all, I would like to apologize to Miss Elizabeth and other participants from Impetus and Real. They've been waiting, for quite a while now to present the findings of our report. So I will now ask Miss Elizabeth and her colleagues to join us to present the findings from the report on climate smart low-income housing in Pakistan. A brief intro about Real. Real is an innovator and investor with 30 plus years of organizational heritage and expertise in sustainable urban development, working with public and private sectors across Asia and Africa. They have a proven track record of pioneering and addressing barriers to scale in a global context, and is an experienced investor in the climate smart, affordable housing sector within Pakistan. And the Impetus Advisory Group is a management consulting firm founded in 2019 in Islamabad by leading transformation specialists with extensive experience within Pakistan's public and private spheres. So now I'd like to ask Ms. Elizabeth to join us and share her findings on the report.
Thank you very much, Hassan, for the introduction.
Welcome.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we are able to see your screen and we're able to hear you perfectly fine.
Okay, fantastic. So good afternoon, everyone. So as Hassan said, I'm Elizabeth Tarney. I'm the Research and Policy Manager at Real, and we worked on this report with Impetus Advisory Group, and we collected the data for this report in around March or April this year. So when I'm presenting some of the statistics, do bear that in mind that some of them are from then. And the main aim of this report was really to give an overall landscaping of the current situation in terms of climate smart housing in Pakistan at the minute, looking at things like the regulatory environment, the policy environment that I know we've discussed in earlier panels, as well as the barriers and the opportunities for developers, such as the ones we spoke to earlier today, as well as the financing situation, both for end user finances as well as construction finance. So that's what the report really focuses on. So for this presentation, I will just give a brief overview of the landscape, then go through the key research findings, and then end with the key recommendations. So as we know from the devastating floods which happened earlier in the year, Pakistan is one of the countries which is most impacted by climate change, actually number 8 of 10 in the world, along with the Philippines, as well as countries like Bangladesh, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique. And this is really having a devastating impact on people, not only from the floods, which we know displaced over 32 million people this year, but also in terms of yearly impacts, in terms of heat stroke and things like that. You can see in 2015, 56,000 people were hospitalized due to heat stroke. We're seeing very high temperatures of around 50 degrees that was recorded in Balochistan earlier in the year. Now, I'm sure many of you have been following COP and the things which have been coming out of the United Nations this week, and it looks like climate change is only going to become more intense as time goes on. So these kind of impacts are only going to become more intense, and they're really impacting the low-income populations more. So I think 40% of the urban population in Pakistan live in either slums or informal housing. So the health impacts of this for this population are really going to be huge. Now, given this situation, there's a really huge opportunity to be able to invest in climate smart housing, like some of the housing that some of the developers have just presented. So there's a number of tools for this. So I know we've heard about IFC Edge tool. We've also heard about the Seed tool. Now, if houses follow these kind of guidelines in terms of maximizing energy efficiency, minimizing water consumption, and minimizing the embodied carbon, you can save a huge amount of CO2. So you can see for the 10 million homes, which is the gap in Pakistan, you can save between 160 and 200 million tons of CO2, which is really huge. And this can be done in many cases just at the same price as other affordable homes in Pakistan, or in some cases it can be done more cheaply than regular homes in Pakistan. So this really could provide a solution moving forward. So in terms of our key research findings, one of the main things we found is that there really is a lack of capacity, and this is both in the public and private sector within Pakistan. So the minute there's really been no efforts to lift barriers to entry. So for instance, if you're a climate smart developer like Modulus Tech or AMC, you're going to have the same processes that you have to go to register your land, to get your no objection certificates as other developers in the space. Whereas what we found in other countries that provide fast tracking options or one window operations, it really does encourage more developers to come into the space. So that's one thing that really could be done to improve the situation. Another key issue we found is that there's really a lack of technical capacity. So even if all of Pakistan's green building codes were made compulsory tomorrow, there wouldn't be that capacity both within the building sector to be able to implement them, but also within the government to be able to audit that and test compliance. So there really is a lack of capacity which needs to be built. And also in terms of data collection. So I know we were talking about financing earlier and the importance of green financing. Being able to collect data on things like CO2 emissions for the construction sector is so important to be able to access that financing. So that again is also really important. Now next, another thing we found is that there's really no incentives or disincentives for developers to limit the amount of carbon they use. So there's nothing that tells developers to, curb the amount of resource intensive materials they're using, or there's no tax incentives on the other side to kind of use these climate smart and climate friendly building materials. So on both sides, there's really not any incentives there for developers and industries to be climate smart. However, on the positive side, we did find that there has been some improvements in terms of access to finance. So I'm sure many of you will have known the MPNG scheme, the Mira Pakistan Mira Gar scheme. And this provides 4 types of financing for people who want to extend their homes or to buy a new home or to build on their own home, on their own land. And we did find that as of March this year, they had dispersed over 56 billion to beneficiaries, which is really huge. Though unfortunately, we heard that this scheme has been suspended until at least next year. So it's unclear when this may start up again. Another scheme that we've also heard of earlier is the NAFTA scheme. So this is really looking to fill that gap of 10 million homes by building 5 million homes. Now, as we heard earlier, as of now, less than 1% of these houses have been completed. So there is still really a massive gap. And then of the ones which are underway, so there is over 167,000, as you can see, underway. Of those in March, only 13% of those have been completed. However, we did see that as of last year, the Ministry of Climate Change has actually developed a green building guideline to go with the NAFTA scheme. So hopefully we will see more green building methods as we move forward. And lastly, we did see that the sector at the minute is very much private sector led. Many private sector organisations, such as the one who we've spoken to today, are the ones leading the cause really. So it'd be good to see more public-private partnerships to work on this. And then generally, in terms of supply, we did find that there is a number of disincentives for developers in terms of developing climate smart housing. So one of the key ones is that land is really treated as a commodity in Pakistan. So for many developers, they'll actually make more profit from just developing land within housing complexes and things like that, rather than actually building full houses. Now, this is even true of high income, high cost houses. And whereas with low income houses, the profit margin is even slimmer. So as a result, many developers will just end up doing surface plots and selling on those, as there is more profit to be made. Another key issue is that green finance is really difficult to access within Pakistan. We know internationally it's really a multi-billion-dollar industry and there is a lot of opportunities there. But at the minute within Pakistan, there's not really a number of clear pathways for developers and others to access this finance. And as a result, it means that the cost of developing these new technologies is really then passed on to the customer. So that's another key challenge. Another key issue is that, as we've heard in the last panel discussion, customers are really price sensitive. So they don't know so much about, climate smart technologies or resilient housing and things like that. They care more about the price of products. So even things like fans, energy efficient fans, even if it costs slightly more, 100 or 200 pkr more, they will still buy the cheaper fan, even if that more energy efficient fan would save more cost over time. So again, the developers have had to develop a number of unique selling points to market their houses, like low electricity bills and skilled assembly and things like that, as the demand for climate smart housing really isn't there in Pakistan at the moment. So finally, the key recommendations that we've had from the report. The first is that barriers to entry for new developers really need to be removed. So things like we're talking about, like the no objection certificates that you have to get from various government departments, and it's quite time consuming. We really need to make sure that that is made quicker for climate smart developers, so we encourage more people to come into the space. Another key issue is that we really need to develop more capacity, both within the government and within the private sector, to develop climate smart housing. So the government needs to have that capacity there to be able to audit and test compliance of climate smart housing, to be able to access things like green finance. In addition, things like the indigenous production of climate smart innovations needs to be encouraged, because at the moment it's really difficult for developers to find, climate smart materials on the market. Whereas if you had things like high performance insulation or low impact cement or fly ash bricks being made in the country and being made regularly, and they were really available in the value chain, it would be much easier for developers to be green when they're building. And lastly, we need to find more pathways for developers to access green finance, so that we're not passing on those costs to the customers. And so we can encourage more activity in the sector. So in summary, I think climate smart housing really gives us the opportunity to kill two birds with one stone, to not only solve the massive housing crisis and the shortage of houses in Pakistan, but also to respond to the negative impacts of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Elizabeth, for that wonderful presentation. Sadly, we won't have time for a question and answer session. We are slightly behind schedule. And I feel that I'll be inviting Ms. Sobia now to give the closing remarks. Ms. Sobia, if you can join us. I think Ms. Sobia is facing some connectivity issues. Just give me a few moments till we get her back. While she joins us, I feel we do have time for at least a few questions and answers. So if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll try and get our presenters to answer them.
That's an eloquent silence. Liz, you nailed it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Maybe Elizabeth has answered any preempted questions that people might have had. But still, if anybody has any question, please feel free to add them in the chat option while we wait for Ms. Sobia. And our colleagues at Real and Impetus will be happy to answer them. And if anybody has any questions for our other presenters as well, Mr. Sehgam has raised his hand. Yes, we will be presenting the presentations. We might be emailing the presentations to the participants, and I feel we do have a question by Mr. Sehgam. Yes, Mr. Sehgam, please type your question in the bottom, and we'll ask the presenters to answer that for you.
I would like to just talk. I don't want to write the question.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, please do. Go ahead.
My question is, the two basic issues. One, we have discussed that awareness. And awareness on, when we talk of the habitat development, and then we talk of the retail solution like housing. I think what we are doing, I am involved in some of these solutions. For example, in a house we are involved in Islamabad, first stage is the architect to design the house to make the best use of the air and the sun, so that the house is really efficient, meaning in the daytime, least use of the bulbs and electricity, and air mean ventilation and temperature controls. And then is the water. I think, you see, we are working on a project with PCSAR and all that. You see, about 1/3 of the water in our housing is used for toilet flushing. So I'm involved in a house where the water from the kitchen and the shower is collected into a tank, recycled back, and sent through for the toilet flushing at this stage. About 1/3, meaning we save. And now we are working with PCSAR that we develop the sand filters and the bitumen carbon filters, so that the water becomes again reusable, largely for the kitchen shower and use. So toilet and shower will save about 2/3 of the water, because hardly less than 5% of the water we use in the houses is for drinking and all these kind of purposes. And the second is the rooftop solar. I think we are not really promoting the rooftop solar from the environmental point of view. It's only the microeconomic point of view. The electricity produced by the solar is cheaper than the normal fossil fuel electricity provided by the water KE. But I think a 10 kilowatt rooftop solar saves 12 tons of carbon over a year, which in our country, again, as was pointed out somewhere, that we don't have any carbon trading, carbon credit collection, and then trading mechanism. So all the carbon, which it at all being saved, is going wasted. While globally, carbon is very acting market. So environmental aspect, even the renewable energy is a role in environment is not being recognized. So I think what we really need to do is the retail solutions, as Arif Hassan Saab has said, that we build the houses in such an environment where they save the electricity, they conserve the electricity, meaning their outer walls are more to resist the flow of heat outside, inside, with maybe some plastic foam materials and all that. And the best example is in India, the Indians worked on green housing project with technical assistance from KfW, Germany. And there we said that if the template is followed by the developers in building a high-rise housing or horizontal housing, they will save about 30% energy, meaning 30% energy efficient. So in order to promote that, the developers were being provided finance at 1 to 2% lower rate. But more than that, the market was very vibrant for that. If house with 30% energy efficient, the buyer and the owner will feel that for the next 30, 40 years, 50 years, I'll be using about 1/3 of my energy. So I think in Pakistan, these concepts which have been presented here, we have to start the retail solutions. For example, in my house, I have solar rooftop. My water from the kitchen and shower is collected in a 2-level tank where decantation takes place. And I recycle that water primarily for my plants use. And later stage, I will be planning to use the sand and bitumen filters and may use that in the shower. So I think we now should be working on the retail solutions. Unless and until we do that, and also the awareness, we won't be able to really do the large scale. I am the architect of the Naya Pakistan housing policy. There we did talk of this, but as was said by one of the presenters, that the execution of the housing was been taken by NAFTA. So they didn't really, number one, their performance on housing supply is not really that visible as we have seen in the last presentation, but also they are not really concerned about this concept of saving the energy, saving the water. So unless and until though that stimulus comes from the state, if at all has to be done, it will not be really done by the developers. And the developers, as I said, in India, the developers are using green housing, but they are saying 30% energy efficient. So the buyers are willing to pay the cost because the banks are financing them at a lower rate than the normal lending rates. So I think these are a few quick points. And a large scale housing, we need to do rainwater harvesting. Like we see in Karachi, the Naya Nazmabad have faced lots of floods, and even Bahriya town. But now they developed the water reservoirs, and that those water reservoirs collect all the rainwater, and that water is now being used throughout the year for plants and all that. And maybe at some later stage, they might use that water after filtration for the other supply purposes like washing and cleaning of the housing and roads and all that. So I think their humble examples are available in the market, but really we need to, number one, create awareness. And second, the support from the state and the role the architects and the civil engineers and the academia has to play. They have to really come forward. I will be promoting that. Already we are doing that. I'm the chairman of the National Platform for Housing Research, which is about 28 universities as its member. So we are working to a smaller extent to develop the housing, which could be environment friendly, as I said in my earlier talk. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Zegam, for those wonderful remarks. We have another question. I think it's by Raja Rehan Sab. He has asked, my question is, how can these initiatives be shared up and mainstreamed? This would require bringing the state entities on board. How can this critical mass of successful initiatives influence the state entities to create the enabling environment and then play the role of a regulator? Who would like to take this question? Javier, would you do the honors, or Elizabeth? Alina, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone. So just to kind of reiterate something that Liz explained quite extensively, and this is, of course, something also that is within the report that Real, Impetus and Karandaaz has worked on. But essentially what the report touches on, and this has become more and more relevant, especially in light of the recent floods, is exactly how and where collaborative efforts need to be made in order to spur sector activity. So essentially what we've seen in Pakistan, and people who have lived here for quite a while will know this, is that essentially whenever a disaster happens, like the recent floods, like the earthquakes that happened in 2010, as a state, in terms of state-led efforts, we are right up there with ad hoc sort of responses to building resilience and disaster management. But what we aren't quite there yet with is sort of preemptive measures, preventative measures to build resilience, especially for low-income communities when it comes to housing. And essentially with the impact of the floods that we are still currently facing, and as well as heat waves and other climate sort of events, it is sort of the adverse impacts of these that we are all living through that is something that we should be leveraging when we think about sort of going to lobby for climate action and more sort of sustainable housing. It is this urgency that we must sort of use, and the real life examples of the suffering that is going on. I mean, what is there couldn't really be a better time than now to advocate for climate action and mitigation measures, as well as more resilient housing, as right now when we see the suffering that is widespread across the country. So if at this point policymakers aren't asking themselves what could they potentially do and to sort of spur or encourage sector activity, and a lot of these recommendations are also given in our report, and as well also were reiterated by Liz, right? Removing barriers to entry, making it easier for entrepreneurs and developers like those that we've had on call on this webinar today to actually provide and supply climate smart housing. If that isn't something that we are now doing, it may kind of even be too late if it's not something that we are sort of consciously thinking about at the federal, at the provincial levels, you know, with the sort of public sector alongside the private sector. What we've seen so far in Pakistan is that, again, as Emma mentioned earlier, a lot of these efforts are in silos, and we don't have that sort of cross collaboration that is really needed to encourage sector activity. And it is that sort of lens that really we must all start to adopt and lobby for as well, in sort of the form of policy change. Otherwise, we will continue to only be implementing sort of disaster relief and disaster sort of ad hoc responses. And that will be at the cost of the sort of lives of everyone that lives in Pakistan. So I hope that wasn't too cynical, but essentially to recap, the time is now.
No, it was a good answer. And now we have Ms. Sobia back. I would like to ask her to join us to give her closing remarks. And while she joins us, I'll give you guys a brief intro about her. She is a climate change specialist at the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. Her expertise lies in climate, energy, sustainable development nexus, in creating partnerships and platforms for action, in driving favorable outcomes through policy and programmatic interventions. Sobia has led initiatives in climate risk management. She works with public and private sectors in developing cohesive frameworks for climate action. She serves public policymakers and private sector stakeholders in defining and implementing climate adaptation and mitigation strategies for growth in carbon-constrained economies, as well as facilitating public and private stakeholders to implement these strategies that drive favorable outcomes. And with that, I would ask Ms. Sobia to join us so that she can give us closing remarks. Ms. Sobia, over to you.
Thank you very much. There we go. Fabulous. Thank you very much for having me, and I would like to begin my remarks, and I promise that I'll keep them very brief because I know that you've just been through a marathon webinar session. And I would like to begin by thanking the Karandaaz board, the chairperson, Dr. Shamshad Akhtar, for her continued commitment to climate change and steering Karandaaz to the forefront of Pakistan's private sector response to the challenges that we face. I would like to congratulate and also thank all of the panelists as well as the participants of the webinar. And it was indeed encouraging to see such strong interest from a multitude of stakeholders right at this webinar. So congratulations to Karandaaz management and staff on this event, which deals with a critical yet highly overlooked topic, that of climate smart, low-income housing in Pakistan. So first and foremost, as a climate change advisor, I would like to comment just very briefly on the climate challenge that lies ahead of us. The residential energy consumption in Pakistan accounts for approximately 40% of total energy consumption in the country. So you can imagine the carbon footprint of this sector and also realize the tremendous potential for abating greenhouse gas emissions this sector offers. By making housing climate smart, not only is there a positive climate outcome, but you are also addressing energy poverty that is being brought on because of rising costs of heating and cooling, not just residential, but also commercial buildings. If we've seen anything in the recent past, is that the climate challenge, the climate change challenge is indeed is a reality. It's a stark reality for most of us. It affects us all, and no country is going to be spared from the impacts of further global temperature increases. We are experiencing challenges to the natural environment, to food production, to water resources, and without concerted global action to limit and manage the impact of climate change, we are not going to have a world worth living in. So against the backdrop of COP27, which is currently taking place at Sharm el-Sheikh, this webinar is very timely. The webinar panelists have highlighted two major challenges. The one is obviously of having a resource efficient, energy efficient abode for low income individuals. And then on the second hand, how do you actually make it climate proof? How do you ensure that this resilient housing that is going to be put up will not then be in an area that is either affected by climate stressors or exposed to climate risk. And I particularly enjoyed I believe the presentation from Modulus Tech, and also the inputs from our colleagues Elena and Elizabeth, where they specifically addressed these issues. So kudos to my colleagues and also to all of the panelists for highlighting this issue. When we talk about an enabling environment, as Dr. Sana was mentioning, policy and regulatory as well as legislative frameworks have to come together, and this happens in concert with the private sector. So it's not just about access to credit and access to finance, but I think that the starting point for any intervention has to be with raising awareness. I heard some of the panelists speak about how there's not enough resonance for energy efficiency related initiatives or making existing housing climate smart, or indeed also building new units. It all begins with awareness raising, and once people realize the benefits, then there's going to be more buy-in. This sort of buy-in is needed at the highest hierarchies, with the decision makers, the policy makers, in the hallways of government, and also in the corridors of the private sector. And then this will cascade down to the communities that the colleagues in this webinar are trying to serve. So I think that we need to focus our initiatives at the macro level, at the meso level, as well as at the micro level. The UK is very committed to driving rapid transformation and systemic shifts that are required to achieve the Paris Agreement goals, as well as deliver on the Glasgow Climate Compact. And we employ a full range within our development finance toolkit, including British international investment, putting the UK's strengths, our capital markets, innovation and expertise to work in mobilizing more private finance. I'm also pleased to note that Modulus Tech is also a signatory to the Race to Zero, and we're extremely proud of institutions like Modulus Tech, who are stepping up and really also demonstrating their climate credentials, not just in their practice, but also in terms of what they are preaching. I would not like to take too much time, but I think that in the end, what I would like to say is that energy accounts for 45% of the emissions in the country. Pakistan has set itself ambitious targets for renewable generation, increasing the share of renewables in their power generation by 2030. It is blessed with abundant renewable potential. So if that is harnessed effectively, if we can have simple adaptation technologies that don't cost a lot, but can significantly reduce the carbon footprint of each housing unit, and if then we can use mitigation technologies like more renewables, solar panels, etc., then it will go a long way in serving the goals that the government of Pakistan has set for its as part of its Paris Agreement commitments, and also its contribution to the global community. So collaboration is crucial. Each actor has a unique role to play, and strong partnerships can indeed unlock potential for more green financing, renewable energy, and energy efficiency to help accelerate this transition to a lower carbon footprint, and also making development very, very sustainable and providing climate resilient and safe housing for all. With that, I'd like to conclude. And again, my thanks and congratulations to Karandaaz and all of the esteemed panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, Ms. Sobia, and thank you to all our panelists for joining us, and thank you for all our participants who sat through. And as a concluding note, if anybody wants any of the presentations, they will be made available after this session. You have to email us, and we'll be gladly sending out the presentations that you saw today. And we will have the report uploaded on our website in a few days. And with that, I would like to wish you all a good day, and thank you for joining us. And this concludes today's webinar.